Autistic people can get attached to objects. Here's my thoughts about my rock person who has appeared in hours of my YouTube videos. Some autistic people can have trouble identifying and describing their emotions. I've been using a feelings wheel to work on my ability to recognize emotions. For the therapy, I have to record the feelings as well and journal them. In my story, the rock person ate ordinary rocks, causing the ordinary rocks pain. The rock person was going to reach spiritual enlightenment, transcend their physical body, and harness energy to sustain themselves, instead of eating rocks to sustain themselves. I wouldn't see the rock again, and said my final goodbye. 2 years ago, watching that scene, I felt tearful. Now, 2 years later, I worry I'm saying goodbye to that rock all over again. When there are rocks on top of the ground, worms in the soil underneath have to go around the rock to poo out soil on the surface. The worms therefore poo out soil around the rock, therefore burying the rock. My interest in rocks has been replaced by my interest in worms. The worms bury the rock person, something I once loved. It's sad it's over. Worms can also eat the rock's cotton clothes. Here's the rock person lying on the couch with their bee blanket on. I may lose interest in rocks, but hopefully the rock person will stay in my heart, although I feel insecure about whether they will. To the rock person, one day when I'm gone, you may end up in a river and get washed into the sea. You may get rounded by the currents and waves into a pebble. I feel emotionally blunted, like the round pebbles which have no edges. I feel eager and excited to make this video like the warm, bold, energetic orange magma the rock will become when melted. Just like there is the circle of life, there is the rock cycle. One day you may become granite. We think we are the main protagonist in life. Compared to the rock person that lives for millions of years, I am just a speck. The rock was there before I was born, and it will be there when I'm gone. I feel insignificant, but I hope I was a good speck in the rock's life. Even one day the rock will be destroyed, and new granite will be created out of it. By this time, intelligent octopuses have come onto land and replaced humans. The octopuses have pet rocks, and this octopus keeps the granite rock as a pet. Like the rock liking the octopus instead of me, I feel envious or jealous of people liking other people's videos but not mine. The granite may then turn into the metamorphic rock gneiss through lots of pressure. I feel like the gneiss rock as I feel overwhelmed and anxious and feel like I have a lot of pressure to keep thinking about my videos and can't switch off from them, like the pressure on the gneiss rock. Eventually the earth will become too hot for humans and animals. No me, no octopus to share my intense interest in the rock person and their fictional world. No one to see my videos in the way I do. The gneiss rock lay in bed alone. I feel isolated about this. In the trillions of years that follow, even the rock person is insignificant. One day their remains will be sucked into a black hole and the universe will go dark. This makes me feel even more insignificant when even the rock is an insignificant speck. I live streamed myself sleeping with the rock as part of a sleep stream. I feel peaceful and loving towards the rock. The rock is saying that they've waited over 200 million years for someone like me to come along. Sleep well, rock. Sleep well. At the end of our universe, a new universe was created in its place. The rock's material recycled into the new universe. In the end, a new version of the rock was actually born again into this new universe, as my interest in rocks was born again. When becoming interested in rocks again, I found a rock with holes in that looked like a face. 2 holes looked like tired eyes, and a third looked like an open mouth, as if it was yawning. I yawned in response and felt awe and amazed that I had done so. The contagious yawn shows my emotional connection to rocks. In this new universe, the new version of me said to this new version of the rock, "Thank you for helping me identify my feelings." The new universe had a different writing system. Originally, looking at the feelings on the feeling wheel was like looking at a different language. I felt angry and isolated because I couldn't express my feelings. The feelings are written in an actual fully functional writing system I made when I was a child that is translatable. Now, though, I've learned to read and understand the feeling wheel. By now in the new universe, if you look out the window, you can see flying cars and tall buildings with plants growing on them. I feel joyful and optimistic for the future when I usually feel hopeless. Doing this video makes me feel proud and fulfilled. The spirits of the old universe lingered into the new universe. My old rock person, the granite rock person, the octopus, and the gneiss rock person all watched over me. They had all reached spiritual enlightenment. The spirits had no concept of time and were always in the present. There was no past or future for them to obsess about. I am practicing mindfulness, and maybe one day I will join them. In the present moment. Part 2. My videos are harming my mental health. I might need to stop doing them. I have to say goodbye to the new rock all over again. The cycle repeats. But life feels empty without the rock, my videos and the fictional world they reside in. The rock's vacant imprint still left in the bed, like an unfilled void in the bed. I needed them to be happy, but now they just made me unhappy. The rock finds its way into the nearby river Ousburn and flows down Jesmond. There is a bridge here covered in fluffy green moss. Fluffy things to feel and cuddle comfort me. I feel loving and peaceful, despite all the sewage of life floating down the river and on top of the rock. The river Ousburn will flow into the larger river Tyne. The rock will find its way into a river and get washed down the river Tyne. It will pass Newcastle city centre and the Tyne Bridge. The river meanders, oscillating left and right, as people's mental health meanders, oscillating from good times and bad times. But I feel I have so many mental health conditions that at any one time I'm always suffering from at least one of them, and I don't get good times, just bad. I feel hopeless, despair, and hateful towards the situation. The river flows into the sea. The sea's waves round the rock into a pebble. A starfish keeps the pebble company. I want to feel like the bright, orange, exuberant star, joyful and playful, joking on and being daft like I do. The rock has been rounded into the pebble that the bird is standing on. I think about my videos and fictional world every single minute of the day. My videos cause me so much overwhelm, stress, anxiety, worries and depression. I'm completely obsessed with them. I need someone to like my fictional world and like my videos to make all the effort at the expense of other areas of my life worth it. I need the bird to look at the pebble that is my character and like it. I need the bird to validate my insecurity. I need the bird to share in the rock's world so I don't feel as isolated and disconnected from other people. The rock got the ferry from England all the way to Amsterdam. People dress up the pebble and take cannabis and drink alcohol and party with the rock. I feel addicted to my videos and world about the rock, and this makes me anxious and worried because addiction is a serious thing. I feel frustrated, defeated, and powerless because since becoming an adult, I've been good and always avoided drugs and alcohol out of fear of getting an addiction. and yet I still feel addicted. The sandstone pebble will eventually crumble and disintegrate into sand. The sand will then be eaten by worms and pooped out into squiggly worm casts made of sand. Like the pebble, my interest in rocks has crumbled once more and has been replaced by an interest and lovingness for worms, even parasitic worms. This time I feel alright though, because my interests alternate, and I know I'll be interested in rocks again. In a previous part, I said worms pooping out soil would bury the rock in the ground. I feel amazed and ecstatic that my two favourite things, rocks and worms, interact with each other and are interconnected. When I used to feel sad at the rock getting buried. Eventually this universe will die and another universe will be created. Cosmic microwave background radiation will be left over from the new Big Bang. Maybe I don't have to say goodbye to the rock. Maybe I can enjoy the rock in my videos in moderation. In this new universe there will be a new version of the rock, just like there is a new version of Doctor Who. Autistic people can get intensely interested in a specific thing, like I am in this rock in my videos. There is also an OCD component to my videos, where I obsess over them and they're compulsive and cause me distress. I may possibly also have maladaptive daydreaming, which is like being addicted to thinking of a fictional world or story in your head all the time. With depression, I ruminate that nobody watches or likes my videos. All these conditions combine to make doing my videos incredibly intense, like the Big Bang. With my OCD, I used to worry about the house burning down. Rocks are millions of years old. They can endure the harshness of life, even when blackened by a fire. If everything else burns and gets destroyed, the rock surviving will only make the rock more special and more important to me. The rock has stayed with me through all my ups and downs. They will endure and stick with me no matter what. I feel optimistic and hopeful. And courageous. Part 3. Trigger warning, distressing topics such as suicide and taboo OCD thoughts. Just like my rock will have a big journey passing bridges as it flows through rivers, other rocks will have their own journeys that are just as rich and complex. Another rock may flow through a body of water in San Francisco, where there is the Golden Gate Bridge. I usually feel very isolated and alienated, but now I feel optimistic and open towards other people having similar journeys to myself. Maybe one day the rock will become a new rock and my body will be fossilized in that rock. Feeling suicidal is meant to be a big thing, but for me wanting to die feels ordinary, mundane and normal. I've felt like this every day for months and months. Even at the best of times, existing feels like constant suffering, even when I'm not depressed and I want to die. I don't believe in any God, yet I still beg them for death, non-stop for hours, yet death never comes. Eventually the light from me and my rock reached other galaxies. As the galaxies move more away from each other over time, our galaxy with the rock in it gets redshifted and looks redder and redder from the perspective of other galaxies as reality gets warped. Over time, OCD warps your whole reality and perception of who you are. It makes you think things that aren't true are reality. It makes you think you're a sexist, racist, narcissistic paedophile. It makes you think you don't have autism. You feel so confused, guilty and shame over something that's not true but feels real, and anxious and insecure as your whole reality gets redshifted, as it warps and you feel like you don't know what's real or not. The rock and the other rocks are rounded by the sea into pebbles once more, and are covered with shells. With OCD, I worry that I'm staring at people inappropriately when I'm not. All my crushes have been the same age as me, yet I worry I have an obsession with them, and that it's a condition. I've never stalked anyone, yet I associate things like stalking with an obsession, and I don't ever talk to my crushes out of a fear of making them uncomfortable. OCD makes you think any thoughts about sex or romantic love are bad, and you feel uncomfortable, embarrassed, shameful and guilty, and suppress them. I've made lots of videos about being in a relationship with rocks or inanimate objects, like singing love songs to them. Rocks don't have feelings, you can't harm rocks, and so maybe it feels better to express my feelings in this creative way. Sublimation is a defense mechanism that involves channeling unwanted or disturbing thoughts into something positive or constructive. Maybe that's what I'm doing with the rock. In science, sublimation also means when a solid turns directly into a gas. In billions of years' time, when the sun expands and becomes a red giant, the conditions may be so harsh that my hot blue rock sublimates and turns directly from a solid into a gas cloud. I don't know if I'm using sublimation as a defense mechanism. I'm just so analytical of myself and obsessed with trying to find out what's wrong with me. Feeling anxiety and being obsessed about my own psychology makes me feel like I'm narcissistic, and that makes me feel guilty, depressed, and bad about myself. Eventually the universe ended and a new universe formed. In this universe there was more antimatter than matter to begin with, and all the regular matter was annihilated, leaving only antimatter. There was an antimatter version of me and an antimatter version of my rock. OCD thoughts are so distressing because they go against who you are as a person and go against your values, and unwanted OCD thoughts are the opposite of who you are as a person. A person who worries about germs can be the cleanest person, and so one of my therapists said I was the safest person to be around because my thoughts aren't true. The thoughts are like an antimatter version of myself. Time can be imagined like a fourth spatial dimension, just like the dimensions of up and down or left and right. All the versions of the rock through time are joined head to toe into an elongated worm shape. In philosophy, this is known as a space-time worm. All versions of the rock through time exist at once as different personality states. The rock has what used to be known as multiple personalities disorder. Each personality state or version of the rock sits together in a coliseum that is in the mind, watching the battles of life. I feel amazed, excited and joyful to make this video. Inner space inside the mind feels as vast and complex as outer space. Part 4. Eventually another universe is created. In the new universe, Earth's history repeated itself. Bacteria produced oxygen, changing Earth's atmosphere. The oxygen reacted with the iron in what would have become my rock. This gave the rock a rusty red appearance. I feel like my videos and fictional world are my oxygen. I can't stop making them. They make me anxious, worried and overwhelmed, but I feel bored. Watching TV and playing video games seems like a chore that I'm not interested in. There's too much time in the day. I want to pace in circles all day while listening to music and think about and make videos. Nothing else matters. I don't like relaxing. In this new universe, Earth's past fossil record repeats itself. Hair is so common in invertebrates and plants that some members of Earth's most diverse invertebrates, like trilobites and ammonites, may have had hair in real life. My autism means I really like stroking soft and fluffy things, like dressing gowns, and I like the look of them as well. This is a sensory thing, and I actually developed a special interest in fluffy invertebrates and fluffy plants and the microscopic hairs on gecko lizards. I felt loving and peaceful. joyful and interested, stroking fluffy things. I wonder what fluffy creatures past versions of the rock encountered. In the new universe, the Carboniferous period would happen again. Sand is deposited in a river delta and forms sandstone. 300 million years later, this sandstone would end up with me and become my rock. It feels surreal, maybe intimate, sensitive or vulnerable. All we ever did together, all we ever saw, it started with just grains of sand from other rocks 300 million years ago. Just a humble and peaceful existence before life's problems and complexities. It's amazing to think about it. I love this rock. The rock can't move much and therefore has chronic fatigue syndrome. They stay in bed and move so little, algae hair and an algae goatee grow on them. A race car bed was bought for them so they could drive around while staying in bed. I don't have chronic fatigue syndrome, but I get lethargic with depression and feel apathy, not wanting to do anything. The rock drives onto a road intersection inspired by worm casts. I feel like all my OCD themes intersect into one tangled mega theme, and I feel like all my mental health conditions intersect into one tangled mess rather than distinct conditions. Depression gives you lower self-esteem and makes you feel guilty. When I'm depressed, my OCD changes to make me feel more like a bad person. The rock drives on a rainbow road like in Mario Kart. They drove around the planet's rings in the solar system. I felt joy for a few days. The world literally seemed more colourful. Last year, the longest I wasn't depressed for at a time was a week, and so it doesn't feel long enough. I feel hopeless and powerless, depressed, frustrated and hateful towards the situation. Eventually, another, even newer universe will form. This one will be a mirror version of our universe. Earth will look flipped. Even molecules that make up living organisms will be flipped. Like left hands and right hands are mirror images of each other, but cannot be superimposed onto each other. In real life, life uses right-handed molecules of sugar, and the building blocks that make up proteins are left-handed molecules. In the mirror universe, life uses the opposite-handed molecules. All the race courses are flipped. The rock is used to and comfortable driving in the opposite direction and on the other side of the road. Driving will be much harder for the rock. Rocks are usually passive to their environment, but now that the rock can drive and go wherever they want, they are in control and not passive. No matter how hard it is to work out what path to take and follow through with it, I feel determined to try and take control of my mental health, even going against what feels comfortable. The multiple versions of the rock are the rock's personality states. Having multiple personalities disorder can be exhausting, and the rock has chronic fatigue syndrome on top of that. The rock's conditions are interconnected. I don't have those two conditions, but with autism, you can focus in on one very specific thing you're interested in, like this one character, at the exclusion of other characters. But you can find a lot of detail and complexity in that thing, like all the versions of that one character, maybe even variety. When I was a kid, I'd go crazy over the same toy I loved, but in a different colour. The rock had mentally exerted themselves too much with all the driving. They were now exhausted, and all the switching personality states contributed to this. They entered into a symptom of chronic fatigue syndrome called post-exertional malaise. Because they had done too much, their condition had worsened. They hadn't moved in so long, and their algae hair and beard had grown so long it covered their whole body. They didn't even bother wearing any clothes because their body was covered, and even a tree had started growing out of them. They decided from now on, They'll try not to exert themselves too much. Eventually I will die and decompose into the dark organic matter in the soil, called humus. The rock will turn into sand. My soil will get incorporated into new life, but then they will become soil again. A pile of organic material that is me, and a pile of sand that is my rock, hold hands watching the sunset. I try and make the rock different to myself, but they are still a part of myself, an expression of myself. If one of us dies, we both die. I feel sad, but peaceful and loving. Part 5. This part is about the rock's condition, not mine. When the rock was young, they experienced the trauma of a quarry. In the future, the silica in the rock will turn into the silica skeletons of sea sponges. The rock created these personality states because they thought if they were a sponge and not a rock, the trauma of the quarry wouldn't have happened to them. Of course, trauma can happen to anyone. Sea sponges can be exploited too and used in the bath. But the rock was just young when the trauma happened. They didn't know any different, and so sponge personality states were formed. Silicon atoms in the rock started out as hydrogen atoms in stars. In one universe, the rock's atoms remained as hydrogen gas, and they became a flying airship called a blimp, filled with light hydrogen gas to fly. This personality state was created because they thought if they could just fly away from the quarry, the trauma would never have happened to them. In other universes, light interacts differently. In one universe, the rock looks diffracted, as if it's light that has passed through a prism. There is more than one colour of the rock at once, and so more than one personality state is occupying the rock's body at a time. The rock feels exhausted and unpleasant, with all the personality states fighting over who's in control. In one universe, everything looks blurry. The rock's personality states are not always separate and distinct. Sometimes they blur together, and the rock doesn't know who they are. The rock feels confused and scared, not knowing their identity. In the program called Friends, there is actually a what-if story where an alternate version of Monica never lost weight. I'd like to think there is a Friends multiverse. What if all fictional universes are part of the same multiverse of multiverses, and the different versions of the rock are part of this same multiverse? Monica has symptoms of obsessive-compulsive disorder, or OCD, and a similarly named condition called obsessive-compulsive personality disorder, or OCPD. OCPD involves perfectionism that leads to controlling behaviour. There is a subtype of OCPD that may be a mix of OCD and OCPD, which involves people-pleasing. Monica does people-please. In the Marvel multiverse, there are many versions of the superhero Deadpool. There is actually a panda bear Deadpool in the comics. One of the Rock's personality states is a version of Deadpool. The Rock joined the group of Deadpools in the multiverse. The Rock's Deadpool personality state was created because the Rock saw Deadpool as a strong protector with superpowers, and because Deadpool was what the Rock would have needed to survive the trauma of the quarry. In one Friends episode, Ross pretends that a blimp hit him and faked his own death. In one universe, the blimp that is the Rock's personality state actually did crash into Ross. Monica was devastated and enraged, and this led to the multiversal war. Daniel Henschel is a satirical content creator. They play different versions of a character from across the multiverse, like a therapist version or a priest version. An orb allows them to travel across the multiverse. The versions of The Rock and the versions of Dan battle over the multiversal orb. Daniel Henschel's characters can be quite narcissistic. Multiple personalities disorder was renamed to dissociative identity disorder and is not in the category of personality disorders. Narcissistic personality disorder and obsessive compulsive personality disorder are in the personality disorder category though. The psychedelic drug salvia can make you think you're an inanimate object, and the trip can last several minutes to an hour, but can sometimes feel like years. Everything in this video, all the time and universes, has just been a hippie on salvia, thinking they're a rock for the longest half an hour of their life. I wasn't on drugs when I had my psychosis, but since then I've always stayed away from weed and psychedelics out of a fear of becoming psychotic again. Panpsychism is a real theory that everything is conscious. Maybe just like matter and energy are fundamental properties of the universe, consciousness is also a fundamental property of everything. Subatomic particles are units of consciousness, or if you believe the universe is made of microscopic strings, not particles like in string theory, strings are conscious. The strings that make up the rock are conscious. Maybe hallucinating you are a rock is evidence that everything is conscious. Part 6. Billions of years in the future, the sun will expand, engulfing the earth and destroying any remains of my rock. By this time, my descendant will be a thin piece of skin, all that remains of the last human. My descendant has my glasses, fringe, and my yellowish skin. Like their inspiration, Cassandra from Doctor Who, I will witness the sun destroying the earth. With my videos and daydreaming, I feel exhausted, like I've been worn thinner and thinner into a flat piece of skin. I've done over 50 drawings for this video, and it might be a video that's finally good enough that people will watch this. What if I make a mistake? What if I mess up what I've already made? I can't take the pressure, it's too overwhelming. I feel worried, anxious and agitated, but I can't stop adding to the video. I want the rock to be destroyed. I want this all to end so I can move on to a new project with more diverse characters. I want the sun to engulf the rock like the rock has engulfed me in its all-consuming presence. Trillions of years pass and eventually the universe is dominated by black holes. The rock's remains get sucked into one black hole and my remains get sucked into another separate black hole. These two black holes would come to orbit each other. My black hole and the rock's black hole reach out their arms and have one last embrace. Gravitational waves are produced by this event that reverberate and ripple, shaking space-time itself. I can't escape the rock. Their mass keeps pulling me in, like the black hole. I feel I don't have a choice. No matter what I try doing, nothing can escape a black hole. Maybe the black holes are hugging. Maybe I wouldn't keep making videos about the same rock if I didn't still love them and find them interesting. And I'm just worried and insecure that I don't. Or maybe the arms are fighting with each other as I struggle to escape the rock I feel apathy for, who is just part of a routine I no longer care for. I guess you can feel love and hate and anger at the same time. I'm just so overwhelmed. Eventually, by the end of some universes, everything will have become an eternal void of nothingness. In other universes with different laws, there will always have been nothing. I've been feeling less suicidal and less depressed lately, but I've been thinking life is still suffering. People have war and injuries and diseases. We have painkillers, anesthetics and treatments, but making humans' lives better has been at the expense of the environment and animals who don't have any of humans' luxuries. The universe is amazing, but maybe if nothing existed in the universe, nothing would be better than something. Maybe depression makes you biased, but humans are designed to survive. We may be even more biased towards living. I still feel a bit depressed and hopeless and apathy. Some people with multiple personalities disorder, or dissociative identity disorder as it is now known, have an inner world inside their head. This is where the personality states can congregate and interact with each other when they're not controlling the body. Some people with inner worlds have mansions or castles in their inner world, but the rock is a simple rock with simple wants and needs. An apartment complex will be suffice. The different versions of the rock are at their windows. People with the separate condition maladaptive daydreaming can also have a world that they daydream about called a paracosm. However, they are a different thing to inner worlds, although people can have both conditions. The rocks have their beds in the apartment complex. Even at the end of the universe, when the universe is a void of nothingness, the rock's remaining essence can find solace in the inner world in a bed in the apartment complex. In Doctor Who, Rose absorbed the time vortex, and it made her experience all of time and space. What if this whole video has been the experience of an ordinary rock absorbing the time vortex? The rock spoke. I can see the whole of space and time, every single atom in existence, and I divide them into subatomic strings. Everything must come to dust, everything dies, and the multiversal war ends. I can see everything. Why does it hurt so much? All that is, all that was, all that ever could be. It's so intense and overwhelming. I said to the rock, that's what I see all the time with my fictional world and videos. And doesn't it drive you mad? Come here, you. I kissed the rock, and the energy left the rock and entered me. I think I might have maladaptive daydreaming, but OCD, autism and depression make it more intense. Part 7. The rock saw the whole of space and time, but what if space and time don't exist and are just made up by the mind? Line graphs and bar charts represent reality, but reality doesn't physically look like a bar chart. In the same way, the mind generates space and time to represent reality, but space and time aren't physically real. The colour red is just particles or waves oscillating at a certain wavelength. It is our mind that creates the sensation of red. Similarly, it is just our minds that creates the concepts of space and time. They don't really exist. There may be a 1.8 billion year old giant amoeba. A billion years where everything was stable followed this, and after that the whole earth froze over. What if the giant amoebas had a civilization so advanced that they were the ones that kept the environment so stable for a billion years, so that the earth stayed suitable for them? What if their bodies were too soft to fossilize, and that when the earth froze over, the ice removed any record of them? Like some of today's amoebas, they could have photosynthesized. The oxygen levels were too low for complex animals to evolve, but the intelligent amoebas could have used their own oxygen produced through photosynthesis. Our relative that lived 1 billion years ago was a ball of multiple cells called bicellum. Like animals, this real organism was multicellular and was part of a group called holozoa that includes animals and their close relatives that aren't animals. I'm related to them, and so maybe just in the story, they share my fringe and glasses. I'm interested in things other people don't find interesting. I'm interested in a billion-year stretch of time in Earth's past that scientists have actually called the boring billion. While liking different things can add to a sense of alienation, isolation, and rejection, I still feel happy, awe, and amazement, peaceful and loving towards Earth's amazing past, and I feel grateful and connected when other YouTubers like GeoGirl make videos about Earth in its more humble stage. I die and enter the stage of decay where you become bloated, filled with gas. I float out to sea with a tropical island in the background. I feel angry, frustrated, depressed, and anxious. I feel like I watch things to distract me, but soon after I just feel bad again. Nothing I do can put a dent in the depression. I'm feeling hopeless, and I don't understand why people can't understand that I'm not going to get better. I feel hateful and apathy. There's a famous quote that trying to do the same thing over and over again and expecting different results is insanity. But when 5 therapists can't help me, I'm expected to believe another one can. I had 18 sessions with one therapist who specialised in autism, who focused on rumination for a lot of the sessions, and it actually made my rumination worse. I feel annoyed. At least I know my fantasies aren't reality, but people live in some happy fairy tale place where everything works out and has an happy ending. Reality isn't like TV. Reality is callous. It doesn't care about me. I don't believe any magical person in the sky is going to help me. When the rock turns into a new rock, my skull and skeleton fossilise in the new rock. The rock likes makeup, and on the Day of the Dead they decorate my skull with colours and flowers on to look like sugar skulls. Instead of feeling like I want to die, I felt like if I died, I couldn't put my video together. I was going out for the whole day, but I felt scared that if I got in a car, I would crash and die. I felt scared a dog might attack me, or I might get stung by a wasp, or that the sun would be too bright for my sensory issues. I feel scared of the world, and the world seems dangerous. I hand sewn together a hat with ferns on. These small ferns grow on stone walls, so I gave the rock this hat as the rock likes ferns. The ferns look like feathers people put on hats. I also hand sewn together the rock a crop top with ginkgo leaves arranged in an overlapping frill pattern. There was a real man who actually mistook his wife for a hat. This was due to a neurological condition called visual agnosia, where people can have difficulty recognizing people and objects. Because people can mix up hats and people, I am actually the fern hat, and you have mistaken me for a person. Everything I've done and said about myself and my mental health ever has just been a hat talking. I have deceived you. Amoebas can change their shape. You mixed me up with a hat. But what if I, the hat, am actually one of the intelligent amoebas that's just changed their shape to look like a hat? Ditto is a shape-shifting Pokemon. What if Ditto has disguised themselves as the amoeba that has disguised themselves as a hat that has been mixed up with me? The X-Parasite is a shape-shifting space parasite from the Metroid video games. What if the X-Parasite is disguised as the Ditto, that's then disguised as an amoeba, that's then disguised as a hat, that's mixed up with me? I feel confused, overanalyzing myself, trying to work out what about myself and my psychology is true. With OCD, I can't come to any conclusion. I feel overwhelmed and anxious. Am I emotionally harming myself? Am I addicted to my own negative emotions? Why does engaging in autism special interest, daydreaming, and doing OCD compulsions all make me temporarily more anxious and overwhelmed when they're all meant to temporarily relieve anxiety? Why do I seek out negative emotions and hate doing things that relax me? I could be a hat, I could be an amoeba, or a Pokemon, or a parasite, or a space parasite, or a boggart, or a skrull. Which one is it? Can I be more than one? Part 8. Every piece of fiction ever is in the multiverse of multiverses, but the Daleks from Doctor Who want to destroy every living being that is not a Dalek in the whole of the multiverse of multiverses. Here's some Jungian psychology. In Doctor Who, some of the Daleks were part human. Their conscious self identifies with their Dalek traits, and they want to show people these traits. This is their persona. They shun their opposite human traits that they don't like about themselves and put these negative traits in the unconscious. This is known as the shadow self. on a spectrum from hateful to compassionate. The Daleks is not 90% hateful and 10% compassionate, because at times the part human Dalek can be very compassionate. They are all of the spectrum at once. They are the totality of themselves. They are both their conscious Dalek persona and their opposite human shadow self. The qualities the Daleks hate about humans are the qualities about themselves that they push into their unconscious shadow self. Why they hate humans is more about themselves than it is about humans. One version of Dan Henschel had been on the Titanic. They rode an old-fashioned penny-farthing bike around. The Daleks said, "Our spaceship is indestructible." "Nothing is indestructible," Dan exclaimed. "The Titanic was unsinkable, but I saw through that lie, and I can see through this one." "Their spaceship is going to be destroyed as soon as it comes out of the hangar. We're going to destroy the Daleks. I'm going to dress up as a Dalek as part of my magic act and sneak onto their spaceship." Lots of animals, including penguins, are gay in real life, so being gay is natural. Although light bulbs and everything in modern society is not natural, yet we still use light bulbs, so whether something is natural shouldn't matter that much in the first place. The Daleks were going to destroy all animals on Earth. A drag queen from RuPaul's Drag Race called Danny Beard was going to save all the gay animals. I used fluffy pipe cleaners for their mustache and pom-poms. They exclaimed, "I'm building an ark like in Noah's Ark, but it's just for all the gay animals." Monica from the programme Friends felt she needed to be in control of the plan to destroy the Daleks and wanted to do everything herself instead of delegating tasks to other people. This is a symptom of obsessive-compulsive personality disorder, or OCPD, not OCD. Monica eventually realised that the plan was bigger than herself and that she would need all the help she could get to defeat the Daleks. The different Deadpools have healing superpowers and so would fight the Daleks. The Deadpool rock couldn't be weathered. The Deadpool version of the rock could therefore remain in the same condition for billions of years. Conglomerates and breccias are rocks that have naturally become cemented together into one larger rock. The versions of the rock had thought about getting cemented together into one larger rock conglomerate. Each of the rock's personality states is a part of the rock as a whole. With the rock's condition, integration is bringing parts closer together and lowering barriers without the parts necessarily fusing into a single part. The rock thought,
"I felt scared of integration. It was a change to everything I've ever known, and I felt confused as to what it would be like. However, everyone has been working together as separate people, but coming together to defeat the Daleks. I've realised my personality states have to work together to beat the Daleks. I'm going to undergo the process of integration."
The pieces of rock were still separate rocks, but they were now closer together in the form of a conglomerate and could better interact and communicate with each other. They were ready to defeat the Daleks. Part 9. The rock has a personality state that is based on me, and they have my fringe and glasses. The more you're around people, the more you become like them and take on their mannerisms. If you live with someone, you can act more like them. The rock has lived with me in my head so much that maybe me and the rock are becoming more like each other. Maybe this whole video has just been the rock's personality state that is based on me talking about themselves and not the real me talking. I guess this video has been all about the rock all along. What is the true nature of reality? Is this video just someone tripping on the drug salvia? Is this all just an ordinary rock absorbing the time vortex and seeing the whole of space and time? Do space and time even exist? Or are they just in our mind? Am I a hat, an amoeba, a ditto, an X-parasite, a personality state of the rock? In a story, blind men each touch a different part of an elephant. The blind man touching the elephant's side might think, Elephants are strong like giant walls. The blind man touching the elephant's trunk may think elephants are like giant snakes. The blind man touching the elephant's tusks might think elephants are like sharp spears. The blind men may all disagree about what an elephant is like because they can only see one part of it. You have to put all the parts together. This story can be about how each religion is just a different part of the whole truth and that they are all right. If blind men were each going to feel a part of my body, one may feel my green slimy snot and think I'm a giant shape-shifting amoeba. Another blind man may feel the top of my head where I was wearing a hat and think I was a hat. Another blind man may feel my rock-hard abs or my chiseled jawline and think I was a rock. You have an interpretation of yourself in your own mind, but everyone else has their own interpretation of you in their mind. It is hard to see yourself objectively, and so maybe all interpretations of yourself are correct, and are each a part of the whole truth. In real life, tulpas are a bit like imaginary friends, except they're such an extreme version of that they're like another person autonomously living inside your head. They can control your body, and people say they should even have rights. They're a bit like the multiple personality states of dissociative identity disorder, or DID, which is what used to be known as multiple personalities disorder. However, unlike DID, with tulpas, there is no amnesia and no considerable distress, and there are other differences. What if I created an autonomous version of the Rock, living in my head with all their character traits? The Rock tulpa would feel bad, though. They wanted to decide for themselves who they are. They don't want me pushing some other identity on them that they don't want to be. They exclaimed, "I don't want to be a tired rock anymore. I want to be an energetic dancer." They were now a blonde human who wore a pink tutu and took control of my body and made me dance.
I dreams a dream in time gone by. I dreams a dream in life's worth living. Raindrops on roses and whiskers on kittens. These are a few of my favourite things.
I had a pet amphibian called a fire salamander, and one of their eyes was blue. One of the Rock's own personality states is a version of my pet salamander, so the Rock has a personality state that is based on me, and they also have a personality state that is based on my pet. This means that the me personality state looks after the amphibian personality state as a pet, just like how I would look after my pet amphibian. They love each other. People with dissociative identity disorder can have animal personality states in real life. Part 10. The Rock developed a personality state based on my grandma and wore her fluffy pink slippers and white hairy cardigan. The Rock's personality states were integrating and fusing, but my life and the Rock's life were becoming more similar. We were beginning to fuse together as well. We were becoming one in the union of marriage. Soon animals were being pulled into the Rock and fused with them. Next, moons, planets, and space objects were being pulled in and fused with the Rock. Not everyone with the Rock's condition wants to integrate and fuse their personality states together as part of therapy, and this should be accepted as well. Imagine if two people without the Rock's condition were asked to fuse together. Would you want to fuse with someone else? It was too late for questions like this. The whole of the multiverse collapsed in, fusing with the Rock. The hippie on the psychedelic drug was experiencing a loss of their ego. They said, "We are all like interconnected and totally one with each other, man." Reality collapsed into a single zero-dimensional point. This video has all been about the multiverse that contains more multiverses. It's just the whole multiverse of multiverses that has collapsed into a single point. There are still other multiverses that contain multiverses. in the multiverse that contains multiverses, which then contain more multiverses. There has been real theories about different types of multiverses. Level 2 multiverses are multiverses containing multiverses. There are real theories about level 4 multiverses, which are multiverses containing multiverses containing multiverses containing multiverses. But why stop there? There could be level 100 multiverses, level 200 multiverses, level 1,000 multiverses, level 1 million multiverses, level 10 trillion multiverses, level infinity multiverses. I feel obliterated from it all. My videos make me so anxious, but I just can't stop. It's like an addiction. The educational YouTuber Vsauce has released a video called How to Count Past Infinity. The rock is very simple and can't be bothered with deep thinking, but the multiverse is so vast that despite this, some of their personality states are the YouTuber Vsauce. Some infinities, some unending numbers are bigger than others. In real life we have infinite numbers like Aleph, Null and Omega. We will eventually reach a level Aleph Null multiverse, then a level Omega plus 1 multiverse, then a level Omega plus 2 multiverse, then a level Omega plus 3 multiverse. Eventually we'll reach a level Omega plus Omega multiverse. After that we get a level Omega to the Omega multiverse. It keeps going. We will reach a level Omega to the Omega to the Omega to the Omega multiverse. We will run out of notations and end up with a level Epsilon Naught multiverse. The numbers keep rising. We get to Aleph Null to the Omega, and eventually an inaccessible cardinal amount of levels of multiverses. I feel compelled to compulsively make videos. Part 11. When I die, I will become the organic part of soil called humus. When the sandstone version of the rock dies, they will become sand. Siltstone is made of the same material as sandstone, but with smaller grains. When the siltstone version of the rock dies, they will become silt. Soil also contains clay. These four materials, humus, sand, silt and clay, all mix together to form the soil known as loam. My OCD, autism, depression and maladaptive daydreaming mix together into a horrible brown muddy sludge. When I do videos I feel less suicidal and depressed, but other feelings are mixed into the happiness, joy, excitement and amazement, like pain, worry, overwhelm, insecurity, exhaustion, perfectionism, and a pressure to think pulling at you to make videos. These all mix together into a brown muddy puddle tainting what would be pristine water. I wish I could scoop up this loam soil into a bottle and show it to you like how people collect sand in a container at the beach. What if squids have been living inside the versions of the rock this whole time? Squids can produce calcium carbonate, and these squids use calcium carbonate to cement sand and rock fragments together into a hard shell. This served as protection from predators. The squid shown has a pair of yellow fins that are the reason why the rock's head is shaped like that. The squids evolved intelligence and came onto land, but remained hidden in plain sight. Their fins remained as display structures to attract mates when out of their shell. With my autism, when I'm in public, my true self is masked, hidden in plain sight. I used to remain quiet, as I have to filter my daftness and personality to the point where there's nothing left to say, otherwise I'd look mental. I feel embarrassed, insignificant and alienated, and anxious and insecure and inadequate. The green amoeba that is my true self and the squid that is the rock's true self lie in bed together. I can express myself through my videos about the rock. Me and the rock can be ourselves together. I feel vulnerable, peaceful and loving towards my rock partner. And a bit sad. In the multiverse, one of the rock's personality states is a theatre. The theatre's curtains make the stage the same shape as the rock's head. In fictional media, people's multiple personality states are often obvious, but in real life, in some people with the rock's condition, Their different personality states are more covered up in public, as the condition is meant to keep them safe and go unnoticed by even themselves. When the rock is with me, they feel safe and less scared, and shed their stony exterior, revealing their true squid self. If anything should ever happen and the rock dies, I will look to the sky, to the constellation shaped like the rock, and the rock will look back down at me from the stars. Maybe this whole video has just been nothing more than a humble play at the theatre, and so the curtain will close on this play. The tulpa living inside my head had always wanted to be in a play at the theatre. Their dream had came true. They were elated. At home I often break into song and dance, but I feel unable to in public out of a fear of looking mental. Part 12. Over millions of years, each version of the rock has to have a different squid living inside it, and so each squid is often a different colour. One question remains: does the rock really have chronic fatigue syndrome? Because dissociative identity disorder, or DID, which used to be known as multiple personalities disorder, can be mentally exhausting, and a squid carrying a shell made of rock around can be physically exhausting for the squid. People with dissociative identity disorder, or DID, can think they have chronic fatigue syndrome because the condition is so tiring. There are other conditions that can co-occur with dissociative identity disorder very commonly, like borderline personality disorder and PTSD. Both borderline personality disorder and DID can involve dissociation and past trauma. Borderline personality disorder also involves an unstable sense of identity. In real life, squids can have brains in their arms. What if in the squid, an arm brain and a head brain felt conflicting emotions and disagreed with each other? The squid's head brain felt curious and desired to explore the world without their rock shell, but their arm brain felt scared in case their true self was discovered. Conflicting emotions and desires in humans is known as ambivalence, but because in squids whole brains are disagreeing, this ambivalence is amplified greatly. Taking off the shell could be partly good and satisfy the squid's curiosity, but it could also be partly bad because they might be discovered. There is a grey area between good and bad, but because the ambivalence, the conflicting emotions, and uncertainty are so strong in the squid, it is easier if the squid collapses into thinking in black and white that taking off their shell is all good or all bad. This defense mechanism is known as splitting in humans with borderline personality disorder, where they see themselves or other people as all good or all bad. This and the fact that borderline personality disorder is very common in people with dissociative identity disorder suggests that the rock has borderline personality disorder. The rock does not interact with many people, however they feel they need me around to anchor them to reality. This is a trait of schizoid personality disorder, and schizoid personality disorder can be mistaken for borderline personality disorder, and this is known as the pseudo-borderline schizoid. The rock never talks to me, which may suggest schizoid personality disorder. However, this may just be because they are a rock. Because they are a rock, they can't really act out as much, and so strong emotions, like in borderline personality disorder, may be projected inwards. They may act in rather than acting out, and this is known as quiet borderline. Another question is if the rock has borderline and schizoid traits, which don't necessarily meet the full criteria to be diagnosed. Also, are these traits adaptations rather than a disorder? For example, when a human with schizoid personality disorder is young, they may not cry as much, and this could be advantageous, as if something with hostile intent hears a child, like a predator, could be harmful. If the squid were to cry, it would weather the rock over time, therefore damaging it. Schizoid traits could therefore be advantageous in the squid rock. Another question when distinguishing if the rock is borderline or schizoid is schizoid personality disorder is caused by an underlying fear of engulfment from other people, whereas borderline is caused by an underlying fear of abandonment. Because the rock has dissociative identity disorder, they have a personality state based on me. Their borderline personality disorder complicates this because I'm in a relationship with the rock, and people with borderline personality disorder can take on their partner's personality in a different way by mirroring them. With borderline, the rock therefore has an unstable sense of self and adopts aspects of my identity. But borderline alone doesn't cause multiple personalities or more than one alters, which is the correct term. Part 13. Some autistic people loved trains. They were dependable and predictable, orderly and arriving on schedule, giving a sense of routine. Recently, though, the Newcastle Metro has been incredibly unpredictable with large gaps in service. What the autistic people once loved about trains was gone. Love turned to hate, and the autistic people began an uprising, turning on their own trains. A swarm of them arrived with pitchforks, torches and rocks ready to lay waste to the metro. Some of the mob dressed in all grey because they were hypersensitive to light. Some of the mob were undersensitive to light and dressed in technicolor rainbow clothes covered in sparkly sequins and glitter. The autistic people dressed in all grey said to the autistic people dressed in all colours, "You're overstimulating us with your colours." The autistic people dressed in all colours replied with, "Well, you're understimulating us with all your grey clothes." The two groups turned on each other, although some of the autistic people were a mix between under and hypersensitive, and one person loved purple but hated all other colours. These people were torn which side to take in the infighting. Then a third group of autistic people arrived on Space Hopper back. They loved the sensory stimulation of the space hoppers. They exclaimed, "We autistic people feel empathy for inanimate objects. Don't harm the train. Can't you see you're upsetting the train?" Then a fourth faction arrived, people with both autism and ADHD. They said, "We like routine, but we also like new and novel things at the same time. Don't harm the metro. All the Rajis and crackheads and people fighting on the metro make us less bored of the monotony of everyday life." And that happens so regularly, it's basically a routine anyway. This is the story of the train gates scandal. Jesus may have been gay and had a close relationship with John the Baptist, but just like queer history has been suppressed and erased, this chapter in Newcastle's autistic history will not be taught in school. Why do you think there are new metro trains being rolled out? It's because the autistic community destroyed half the trains. And my pet rock was thrown through the train window and so got to ride around on the metro. The rock saw all the sights. The rock rode the metro train all the way from Newcastle to Sunderland. They got a Sunderland Football Club shirt. They travelled all over the northeast of England on the metro train. They met a chav comedy YouTuber called your Uncle Buzzcocks, who is the godfather of Cramlington. The Rock joined Buzzcocks' gang. Buzzcocks used the Rock as a weapon in their brawls. By making a video about trains, I tried to move away from making videos about the Rock, as the huge project was getting too much for me. But the Rock came back to me on the metro train. Just like how Buzzcocks didn't choose the thug life chose them. I can't choose what I daydream about. The daydreams choose that for me. Part 14. The drawing is of stalactites in caves. The wide stalactites are my long periods of depression, and the thin stalactites are my short periods of depression. The white between them is when I'm not depressed. Every year I have 2 episodes of depression that each last 2 to 3 months. They happen at the same times each year, December to March and June to September. Last year in 2024, I had about 10 other episodes of depression that each lasted a week long. The shorter episodes were in spring and autumn, in between the long episodes that take up all of winter and summer. The longest time I wasn't depressed in the whole year was a week. The seasonal component and the rapid cycling in spring and autumn suggested could be bipolar, but I don't know and felt very worried, obsessively trying to figure it out. In the cave there is a squid living in a stalagmite. It is dark in the cave, and so the squid has no need for eyes or pigment and is white with no eyes. The stalagmite is a disguise for them. The squid is evolutionarily related to the squid living in my rock. You may think of mania and depression as opposites, but mania and depression can occur at the same time. These mixed states can be any combination of manic and depressive symptoms. Further, not everyone fits into either regular depression or bipolar, and so there is a spectrum between regular depression and bipolar. What if being a hat, an amoeba, and a personality state of the rock aren't polar opposites? What if I can have a mixture of features of both a hat, an amoeba, and a rock at the same time? I felt really depressed this morning. Then I socialized and felt happy, and thought I might like someone. Then I felt very anxious when I got home. I'm probably not in a mixed episode, but watching an hour-long lecture on mixed states and then feeling very contrasting emotions has made me very confused and anxious, not knowing what I'm feeling. I feel vulnerable. This is particularly confusing with OCD, where you worry about stuff like whether you're obsessed with people or worry you're making them uncomfortable or creeping them out, and you're not sure what you're attracted to. The rock drives along a made-up version of Rainbow Road called Rainbow Junction, where they battle. Do mental health disorders fit into neat boxes, or is classifying mental disorders just to help tailor treatment to people? People may classify animals in arbitrary human-made groups that are subjective, not objective. Crocodiles are more related to birds than crocodiles are to lizards, but for some reason birds aren't reptiles. Is what we call inanimate objects and concepts all arbitrary and human-made? Is everything a social construct? Why are my symptoms of the mental health disorders I'm officially diagnosed with different to all the information online about them? They don't seem to fit any disorders. I feel alone. Are all mental health disorders on spectrums instead of fitting into neat little boxes? There's a spectrum between depression and bipolar. A spectrum going from bipolar to bipolar with psychotic features to schizoaffective disorder, then to schizophrenia. There's a spectrum with psychosis on one end, with over-mentalizing and polytropism, and autism at the other end, which has monotropism and under-mentalizing. Autism itself is a spectrum, with classic autism going to Asperger's, and then to pervasive developmental disorder not otherwise specified. Then there's the obsessive-compulsive spectrum that overlaps with autism, which contains OCD and body dysmorphic disorder, and body-focused repetitive behaviors. Eating disorders overlap with obsessive-compulsive spectrum, and body image like body dysmorphic disorder. Olfactory reference syndrome overlaps with psychosis and the obsessive-compulsive spectrum. Then borderline personality disorder can have psychosis-like features, just like the ideas of reference and schizotypical personality disorder. But borderline personality disorder can also have dissociation. The dissociation and borderline can quite often meet criteria for OSDD and dissociative identity disorder. But even there is a spectrum between OSDD and dissociative identity disorder, and partial dissociative identity disorder confuses this diagnosis. When you have lots of disorders, they overlap with each other, and overlap with all the other disorders and combinations of disorders into some tangled mess. They all interconnect. I feel anxious, overwhelmed, irritated, and alienated and isolated, alone and confused, trying to untangle and suss out the chaotic mess that is my brain. I used to obsessively worry that I did not have autism, but then when I was officially diagnosed with autism, I worried less about that. And so I'm quite eager waiting to see a psychiatrist to diagnose me. Part 15. The psychologist Carl Jung created the Red Book, where he tried to delve into his unconscious mind. Do my daydreams come from my unconscious mind? Rocks are usually grey. What if this whole video has just been a book called The Grey Book read aloud? I'm able to read physically fine, but psychologically I find reading very difficult and haven't read the Red Book. Do my daydreams reveal things about me? Does my daydream about parasitic worms reveal how I sympathise and empathise with villains or bad people like the parasites? Or how I feel badly about myself like I'm a parasite? Or how my love of earthworms has led me to view parasitic worms through rose-tinted glasses? Maybe this whole video has been a David Attenborough documentary, like Blue Planet or Green Planet, but about rocks and therefore called Grey Planet. Maybe just like Schrodinger's cat can be in a superposition between both dead and alive at the same time. Maybe this video is in a quantum superposition, both a psychedelic drugs trip, a rock absorbing the time vortex, a theatre play, a book, and a documentary all at once. The psychedelic drug salvia can make you experience being an inanimate object, or make you experience thousands of different lives. In the multiverse, this video could be anything and everything all at once. I'm holding hands with the intelligent creature inside the rock. Octopuses can have a brain in each of their arms, but one of their arms is also a reproductive appendage. This means the saying men think with their penis is true for octopuses, as they have a brain in their reproductive arm. This means the octopus-like squid creature inside the rock is hypersexual. Thinking with their reproductive appendage can make them very impulsive and take risks. Octopuses die after reproduction, which makes their hypersexuality very risky. People with borderline personality disorder can also have hypersexuality and be impulsive and take risks. The squid's reproductive brain explains their borderline symptoms. When I've sewn outfits together for the rock, I made them crop tops because if I used more fabric it would have been more work. However, the rock may wear revealing clothes because they want attention, so they feel loved, so they don't feel abandoned, as fear of abandonment is part of borderline personality disorder. Chronic feelings of emptiness are part of borderline personality disorder. Holes are conscious in the story, and therefore the rock's imprint left in the bed is conscious. The imprint feels empty and hollow. The squids inside the rock get replaced every now and then, and there's not always a squid in the rock, leaving an emptiness inside the rock. In hundreds of millions of years' time, the earth will be inhospitable for life, and there will be no squid to occupy the rock. This type of metamorphic rock, called gneiss, feels empty without any squid inside them. Trillions and trillions of years in the future, the universe will become a dark, eternal void of nothingness. The rock's essence will be made of nothing, and this essence will feel empty. The darkness at the end of time feels eternal, and so the emptiness manifests itself in hopelessness. They reflected on their past. Maybe the squid's relationship with the rock was symbiotic. The squid needed the rock's shell for protection, but maybe the rock needed the squid in an attempt to fill the void. What about the different squid living in a stalagmite in a cave? In borderline, metaphorical holes don't always stay the same size, and the cave is like one big hole. The hole keeps growing, getting larger as the acidic water weathers the cave. With help, though, holes can shrink. Warning: drugs, Part 16. The other day I reached into my pocket. I found a piece of paper in a Polly Pocket. I didn't recognize the paper. I thought, was this the blotter paper you get LSD on? I'm sweating. Could the drug absorb through my skin? Will the police find out? I felt paranoid, but I've never took LSD, and it was just an ordinary piece of paper. After this event, I drew squares of the blotter paper you get LSD on each. Each square has a different version of the rock on. I don't take drugs, but I used to have a special interest in drugs as a teenager. And it's interesting because normally psychedelics like LSD, mushrooms, and DMT affect serotonin receptors called 5-HT2A receptors, but the psychedelic ketamine affects glutamate receptors called NMDA receptors, and the psychedelic salvia affects kappa opioid receptors, whereas painkillers affect different opioid receptors called mu receptors. Addiction is very hard to quit and it stays with you. So if you have mental health problems, it's better if you quit drinking, smoking, and drugs before it becomes a problem in the first place. I've been completely sober for 5 years. People on the psychedelic drug DMT often see archetypes. One person called Shane Moss sees the same purple woman every time they take DMT. Maybe a version of The Rock is the purple woman. I gave The Rock a purple face and pink hair. People on drugs often report seeing the same hallucinations as other people. It's interesting how altered states of consciousness can teach us about the mind, consciousness, and reality. Hello. So here's why I don't take drugs anymore. So basically, I had a very traumatic event which led to a psychosis. So I wasn't on any drugs while I had the psychosis. But after that, because I have a psychotic illness, taking psychedelics could be very bad and could make some of them symptoms return. So, and also, when I first developed my OCD around morality, maybe you thought if you're on alcohol or drugs or whatever, you might not have your inhibitions, you might do bad stuff or morally bad stuff. So that's why I quit originally. And then obviously for my mental health, I think now it's better that I don't drink or take drugs or anything. But also, I think if I was to take psychedelics, because maybe for some people they might have a positive impact on their life, might give them new insights, but also I might worry that they might actually make me a worse person, if it changes my brain sort of thing. After in the period of time after I take them. And also, so with OCD, maybe you have to be this really nice, sort of perfect person, morally and really moral. So, if anything's gonna change your brain or might affect your personality in the slightest way, or might make you more angry, the tablets, then you get very worried about side effects, and so it can make you not want to take some tablets, and you can be very worried about side effects. And of course, all these tablet boxes are empty, so you don't have to worry about any risk of overdose or anything. They're all empty. I should probably clarify that I've never actually took psychedelics. I've only ever tried weed a few times, but I took a drug called phenibut, which is like alcohol and benzodiazepines, except phenibut doesn't compromise your ability to think clearly like alcohol does. Phenibut looks like the neurotransmitter GABA, except it has a phenyl ring attached, which allows it to significantly cross the blood-brain barrier. The Rock in my videos are like a drug to me, like GABA, but with a ring attached in the shape of the Rock. But this GeoGABA does the opposite of phenibut. It blocks GABA receptors and makes me more stressed, anxious, and overwhelmed. But I couldn't quit the Rock. Part 17. The Rock is a supreme being, and everything in the universe's field of consciousness is a manifestation of the Rock, just like people see God's face in everything. The Rock's face is in everything. The Rock gave their begotten Son, Jesus Christ, who is the Rock coloured in. In the media, dissociative identity disorder is often seen as an amazing superpower or sensationalised, and unfortunately, I didn't know how to rewrite this part of the script without making the same mistake, and that worries me. But what if the Rock is not a god and just a normal person who deals with a lot of distress and whose condition impacts their functioning? What if trauma created the rock's Jesus personality state? The rock felt powerless and thought Jesus would help them survive their trauma and deliver them from evil. Jesus would protect them, and so they developed a Jesus personality state. Being vulnerable hurt too much, they needed to be divine. The rock also has borderline personality disorder, which can cause psychosis symptoms like delusions. The rock has religious delusions which center around their Jesus personality state. The rock feels fragmented and scattered inside, making them think they are everywhere and all present. I drew a fluffy bee. The rock is hexagon shaped, and therefore for Halloween they're dressed up as one hexagon in a honeycomb. He is the rock person and bee together in bed with a bee blanket on. There is a blue hexagon shaped spot on Saturn in real life. I coloured the hexagon shaped rock blue so that there's Saturn's spot. One of the rock's personality states is a rayfish. I drew on the rock to make it look like the underside of a rayfish. The rayfish looks like it has little legs. The rock spoke. All this suffering, I feel abandoned by God. I fear abandonment so much. If I am God, then God is with me and in me, and will never leave me. Although people's personality states can be superheroes, mythical creatures, or animals, and that is not related to psychosis. Maybe I am not everything and anything, like planets, drugs, or subatomic strings. Maybe my personality states are subtle and covered up in public. Maybe they are mostly rocks like me, but some rocks of different ages. My delusion is past. Part 18. Humans have a brain region called an amygdala on each half of their brain that is involved in emotion. Each individual grain of sand in the sandstone is like an individual brain cell, and the rock's amygdala is made up of grains of sand. Rocks can easily break apart into fragments. What would happen if rocks only had 2 amygdala, like humans, but the rock broke into 4 pieces? Some of the pieces of rock would have no amygdala. This means ordinary rocks have many smaller amygdalas spread out across their body, so that when they break, each resulting fragment has at least 1 amygdala. But what happens when the ordinary rock becomes more human-like, with arms and legs? Then the rock loses all its amygdala except 2. These 2 amygdala grow so that the rock has just 2 amygdalas that are large, like humans do. In the rock, when they became more person-like, they lost all their amygdala except 2. But for some reason, these 2 amygdala never grew in size. This left the rock with just 1 pair of small amygdala. In humans with borderline personality disorder, having smaller amygdala can make it difficult to regulate their emotions, and they can have intense emotions. Billions of years ago, hydrogen atoms in stars fused into silicon and oxygen atoms that would become the rock. What if in a parallel universe the same hydrogen atoms fused into gold, copper and silver instead? These metal atoms, when mixed, would form the alloy, pink gold. This parallel universe's version of the rock is made out of the reflective pink gold. In Mario Kart, there is a version of Princess Peach called Pink Gold Peach. I only like doing things that stress me out, and the competitive nature of Mario Kart stresses me out. I also think if I play as female characters like Pink Gold Peach, people might judge me and I feel embarrassed, but if I don't play as them, that's toxic masculinity, because I'm trying to be more masculine by not playing as them, so I just play as them anyway. And anything social justice related just triggers my OCD and makes me anxious and feel guilty about being a man and then confused about my gender. Men are more likely to do stuff like commit certain crimes, and so even though I don't do the bad things people complain about men doing, my OCD makes me feel like there's still something bad about myself for being a man that would predispose me to doing bad things. The OCD thoughts don't really represent you as a person, and are the opposite of you, like this antimatter version of me and the rock. The OCD thoughts have this really weird logic to them, which makes you feel embarrassed, uncomfortable, and anxious about sharing them. For the whole of every winter and the whole of every summer, I feel depressed. In spring and autumn, my mood rapidly fluctuates between feeling depressed some of the time and not that depressed other days. This whole video was made in spring, on days where I wasn't that depressed and therefore able to work on my video. It is nearly June, and I am nearly due a 2 to 3 month long episode of depression. Spring is meant to be when my depression is not as bad, but every day still feels like suffering rather than pleasant. I still feel life is a negative thing, and that I'd rather be dead all the time. It seems you can't have the ups without the downs, but you can have the downs without the ups, and that just seems cruel and unfair. My depression has never skipped a depressive episode, and I have never been overdue one. I feel miserable, frustrated, and hopeless. If hope cannot accurately predict reality, I cannot have hope. Part 19. I invented my first proper fictional world when I was 9. The main characters in it were my cuddly toys. All my fictional worlds exist in the same multiverse. The same green amoeba made an appearance in the world of my stories that I had 15 years ago, where they were just known as the green gloop. The characters were looking for a star-shaped object when the shape-shifting green gloop transformed into a star shape to confuse us. Then they transformed into a bird and flew to the top of the tree to protect the real star-shaped object. My stories only became distressing later in life when it began to interfere with my functioning. Autistic people can have repetitive and specific interests. They can like the same very specific thing like one character, but like lots of different versions of that same character, like the same toy but in a different colour, or liking lots of different versions of the same one character. I like lots of versions of the same rock, but when I was very young, I'd go crazy for the same squidgy alien embryo toy, but in a different colour. The toy felt like it was made out of jelly, and so maybe there was a sensory aspect to feeling the toy. The giant amoebas in my story are also squidgy. What if this whole time the amoebas that originated on Earth over 1 billion years ago have actually been disguised as the toy alien embryos? My whole life is a lie. Earthworms are squidgy too. What if some earthworms are the amoebas disguised as earthworms? In real life, the rock formed hundreds of millions of years ago, and therefore lived through the entire reign of the dinosaurs. Whales can have giant parasitic worms inside them because whales are so big. Some dinosaurs are so large that they may also have had absolutely giant parasitic worms inside them. Imagine you were that big, top of the worms, the worm king. You'd feel like you were entitled to do whatever you want. That's how the worm would justify infecting the dinosaur. If you were the worm, at the very least, you'd feel powerful and have a big ego. Power corrupts. The worm was now angry at the thought of stopping being a parasite. They would think it was other animals' own fault for getting infected. If other animals were on the same level as I, the great worm king, they wouldn't succumb to getting infected. Why should I, the worm king, lower myself to other animals' pitiful level? Eventually, even the worm king would grow old and die. In their old age, they would realize their own vulnerability. They had realized that even they weren't invincible. They felt sad, empty and hollow. Would parasitic worm culture ever change? Was the worm just a product of its time? Was worm society to blame? This character is narcissistic. What if the parasitic worm king was really a giant shape-shifting amoeba, not a worm? Amoebas change their shape, giving them an unstable sense of self. They feel deeply insecure about their amoeba self and counter this by creating this grandiose,
false sense of self that is the Worm King. They can't show their true amoeba self, because then they would have to confront their insecurities. Sometimes they hate themselves. They act like a parasite to the dinosaur to regain a sense of stability in themselves. My big project on parasites was very sympathetic to the worms. They had evolved to be parasites. If they'd stopped, they'd died. They had no choice. If parasites were secretly amoebas, the amoebas could become anything they wanted, and therefore could choose whether they were parasites. Had the parasites just been manipulating us into thinking their way of life was justified because they didn't have a choice? I am a version of the rock, a hat, and an amoeba all at once. But the narcissistic parasite is also an amoeba. They have a similar amorphous shape to me. With OCD, I worry I am narcissistic, and I can also find similarities between me and narcissists, and use these as evidence that I am narcissistic. Like a narcissist, I feel very insecure, and also like a narcissist, I have a fear of inadequacy, like I worry I'm not good enough. I feel like I need validation and reassurance from others that my videos are good, just like a narcissist might need their supply of attention and admiration. You can't separate me and my ego from my videos. If other people don't think my videos are good, I am not good. That's why they make me so anxious and depressed.
Section 2. Trigger warning: suicide, self-harm, emotional abuse, OCD, extreme distress, talking about groin.
I've stopped drawing and thinking about my fictional world because I'm too worried about other things, just like how in trillions of years' time the universe will go dark. My fictional world has ceased to exist. When talking about prehistoric times, it's hard to appreciate how long really long length of time like the boring billion actually are compared to shorter length of time. At the end of the universe will remain a dark void for such an inconceivable amount of time that whilst some events in this video only take up a minute of the video's length, the darkness will take up much longer. So the next part of this video is mostly audio. Maybe the rock's essence remains but has just gone dark.
And I'm showing these videos you're about to see to the therapist.
At the end of time, amidst the dark void of eternal nothingness, all that will be left of the universe will be dust, and the leftover dark essences of animals like dust mites will eat the dust.
I love mites till the end of time.
So with OCD, you worry about creeping people out and making them uncomfortable. And with OCD, you worry about things like whether you're obsessed with people. So even before being assigned a therapist, I worried I might become obsessed with a therapist. And with OCD, you might worry about the worst thing that could happen. And the worst thing that could happen that would make therapy the most difficult for both people would be if you were obsessed with the therapist. And I'm not sure how to talk about this, as I don't want to say anything like inappropriate to the therapist. So the more I worry about creeping people out and making them uncomfortable, the more weird I probably look, which probably actually makes them more uncomfortable and creeped out. If I go too far in the other direction, and I tried and not be creepy too much, I might look antisocial or uncaring, which would be bad as well. So if you're over friendly or too nice, it might be creepy, but you don't want to be antisocial either. So if the therapist is running the group therapy and I'm being weird about it, it might interfere with other patients' ability to benefit from the group therapy. Am I only thinking of other people to reassure myself I'm a good person? Do I not actually care about other people? Only caring about myself is a bad thing. Normally, because of my autism, even when I'm very anxious, I don't get physical symptoms of anxiety. I lack in interoception. So normally I go months without noticing my heartbeat once. I would never ever get gut feelings or feel any tension in the body. But the last week has been different, so not depressed when getting these symptoms, more anxiety, so loss of appetite, hard to eat, chills, shivering when it is very warm inside, chest pain, panicking, back of throat sore, diarrhea, stomach feels funny, no interest in anything. Normally I'm very interested in Marvel movies, only watched start of new Marvel movie and couldn't watch any more. Not thinking about my videos anymore, too busy worrying. Listened to documentary for an hour, but couldn't pay attention and don't know what the documentary was even about. So ruminating every minute for 20 hours a day. It's like every single minute in the day or whatever. So crying and lying on the floor even though you're more anxious rather than depressed, and turning pale. And I wasn't physically ill, though it was just the distress. So I don't know whether it's appropriate to say why it's distressing to the therapist. So all my thoughts have been completely innocent, but and I haven't had any images. But maybe in some people with OCD, even though your thoughts are innocent, anxiety can affect things like blood flow to certain areas. So it's extremely distressing because the physical response you get doesn't match your thoughts. And I'm not used to my OCD causing a physical response. So I felt extremely distressed. And going to bed at regular time, however, having to sit up on bed as too anxious to lie down. But this is because of the anxiety caused by the OCD thoughts and not related to the OCD thoughts themselves. So doing things that I wouldn't normally do. Normally I only plan on suicide with bridges that are over 100 feet high, so that there's not much chance of me surviving it and ending up in a worse condition if I survive. I will just say now, though, that you can pretty much survive a fall from any height, so I wouldn't advise on it. But anyway, so the bridges that are 100 feet high are hard to get to. However, the last few days I had plans to jump off the Armstrong Bridge in Jesmond, which is only 65 feet up, and so there's quite a reasonable chance of surviving it. So I rang mental health crisis team a second time, and they said I would have to go to A&E as there was no available mental health support in the next hour. I thought A&E would just make me feel worse, especially because it was 6 a.m. on Saturday morning after the Friday night, and I'm very sensitive to seeing pain and gore, and so can't watch any medical programs or the program Casualty. So after that, thought about jumping off the bridge, put shoes on an unlocked door, but standing in doorway thinking about whether I was sure I was going to go through with it. Didn't want parents to worry that I was missing if I wasn't 100% sure I was going to do it. Eventually, Mum found me in the doorway. So I understand now that OCD thoughts are completely irrational and there's no evidence to them. However, the more the situation gets blown out of proportion, the more difficult it is to explain it, and so that's a source of anxiety. Worried if I explain it to therapists because the anxiety was around the therapist, they may feel in some way responsible, when obviously they are not responsible. On a normal day where I'm not in crisis, On a normal day when I'm not in crisis, Dad usually asks me if I want to go out walking for the whole day, and I'll sometimes say no because I don't feel up to it. But the next day, instead of Dad going out first thing in the morning, he'll wait till I get up and try and bully me into going out with him by saying he's given up his whole day for me and wasted his whole day by not going out first thing at 6 a.m. But the day before, when he asked me if I wanted to go out with him, I say no, and made that clear. He normally makes me feel really bad for not going out with him, so I end up just going out with him for a long walk. The day I had been told to go to A&E and then been caught about to kill myself, later on that day wanted me to go for a long walk with him and stop and look at butterflies. Before we left, I said I just want a short walk and won't be able to stop and look for butterflies. We were walking for an hour and a half, but he wanted to stay out longer and stop and look at butterflies. I said I wanted to go back because staying out too long would make me feel worse, and whenever I stopped walking, I felt like I needed to sit down or lie down. Dad started shouting, saying he'd given up his whole day for me. This made me quite angry and hurt. I don't like being entitled, but felt like he shouldn't have done that.
When we got home, I said I'd meet Mum to carry the shopping home, but Dad said I should go around the shop to keep her company, but with autism and social anxiety, supermarkets would maybe make me feel worse. And so also when we first got home, Dad said I should make him a coffee to give me something to do. He said I'm 25, not 94. A walk isn't much for me. So I had been quite angry, but then getting home, I just thought it was so emotionally abusive that it was funny, like Dan Henschel or whatever. And afterwards, thinking a lot about what my dad had said finally managed to distract me from my OCD worries, and so made me feel a bit better. So I'm doing a bit better now, and that lasted for a bit, and then anxious again later. So that's not the end of the story, but some of the other thoughts I had throughout the week were thinking I don't know what to do over and over again, and obviously getting groinal response, thinking I don't know what's happening to me. Like anxious guilty seems to be an extreme groinal seems to be too extreme groinal response to be OCD. And that's probably like a common thought of OCD. So I don't want to think about anything sexual more, because I'm worried the more you think sexual things or the more physical responses you have, the more sexual you become, and I'm worried I'll become hypersexual. The worst possible thing that could happen would be if I got an erection at an appointment and they noticed I'm not thinking any sexual thoughts, as I don't think that would be appropriate of me, but I'm still getting a groinal response, which is making me worried I'm obsessed with them, even though my thoughts are completely innocent. So very anxious, but sometimes worry I'm not anxious enough and that I enjoy the thoughts. Worried that I'm not that anxious, but just telling myself I'm anxious so I don't feel bad about it. If it's a crush, I probably would enjoy the thoughts, but I don't think I even have a crush on them. So pre-cum fluid very frequently throughout the day, and partial erections very regular throughout the day. So this is extremely distressing, as I don't normally do that. Well, I would never normally do that, but all my mental thoughts and images are innocent. So I'm not doing anything that would elicit any physical response. So is this normal for OCD? I was thinking, like, if these symptoms became noticeable at the appointment, it would be very bad. So my dad takes his emotions out on other people and can be very difficult to live with. So you don't express any negative emotions because you worry how it might affect other people's emotions, but part of you wishes people could understand how extreme the distress you're in is, and other people express more emotions than you, and so you think everyone feels anxiety, it's not a big deal. But that's a very invalidating thought. People like Dad express emotions much more, and so it seems they're feeling more intense emotions than me, and that everyone feels just as bad as me or worse, and that's confusing. So one day I went to bed, normal time 10:20, but later felt too anxious to lie down, so sat on bed and stood next to bed for a while. So like with obsessive compulsive personality disorder, which is not the same as OCD, and my dad can overcomplicate and over-explain everything, and it makes other people anxious. So I'm worried I'll overcomplicate and over-explain this, and that means I'm like my dad. Am I just ranting on like he would? But I'm not angry in this video, I don't think. So if I was given a benzodiazepine in accident and emergency, it might reduce my inhibitions. However, on EastEnders, when they're drinking alcohol, extreme emotions and reduced inhibitions don't really go very well together. So I didn't want to take my emotions out on other people if I had lower inhibitions and didn't want to shout at anyone. My dad already rang therapist ranting and raving about medication, then rang therapist again to confirm appointment. So I thought if I rang them again, it would just be hassling them. So at first I didn't ring crisis team because at that point I was suicidal but didn't have any plans to act on it. I therefore didn't want to waste their time if there was no risk of harm to anyone at that point. So do I check the therapist has a good understanding of OCD? Because women don't like people not taking them seriously and doubting their expertise because they're a woman. So I don't want to be sexist, but they're an occupational therapist, so don't know if they're different to a regular therapist. And of course, with the severity of the worry, you would probably worry about anyone, whether they would understand it or not. So stood indoor thinking about sneaking out and killing myself a third time. So don't know what else to do as anxiety is too bad and no one is helping or taking me serious. And I was anxious, not depressed. So not sure whether to tell parents I'm close to committing suicide. Again, as if I'm not 100% sure that I'm going to go through with killing myself, and I tell them I'm thinking about doing it, then wouldn't that be manipulative? I don't want to threaten to commit suicide. I can't take living. I'm used to severe anxiety, but this is worse. When depressed, you very strongly want to die, but I never act on it. With the anxiety distress, you're not sure whether you want to die, but you're so distressed that you don't know what else to do other than kill yourself. So I didn't want to tell family about groinal response because I don't want to overstep boundaries, as talking about genitals to family is probably one boundary. So not telling anyone was making me really anxious. Eventually just said to Mum that with all the symptoms of anxiety I was getting, anxiety can cause blood flow to certain areas and you can get symptoms like that, so I felt a bit better after mentioning that. So at times I feel in more distress than in the weeks after I was held hostage before that led to acute psychosis. So I don't think I'm getting dissociation. And though, whereas after I was held hostage, I felt like I could pass through people like a ghost, and so maybe had dissociation then. So it's hard to be sure the distress is as bad or worse. Though, so as the traumatic event was 7 years ago, so a long time ago. But I wish people could understand how bad I feel internally and take me serious. That's partly why I feel I have to explain everything. If this happened to someone else and not me, I would probably think, well, I also have severe anxiety and severe depression, and I regularly have plans to kill myself, and I don't act in that way. Then I may make some judgment about their actions because I assume their distress is the same as what I regularly feel. But with OCD, you can be hypermoral, but I'm hesitant to say that because it may mean that me being nice is just part of my condition and that I'm not really that nice. So I wish I could tell someone all these thoughts, but feel like that would have a negative impact on them, as if I was just going on and making them anxious. So where do I begin? So feeling more peaceful now, reflecting on things. So that lasted for a bit, but so this information is not as important to read, but didn't want to break my 7-year streak of not shouting at anyone once. And I get so worried about shouting at people that it would be a big deal and memorable if I raised my voice. So I managed not to shout, but also understand that's not normal and that I should probably express my anger and negative emotions more, but in a healthy way. I have been talking to Mum and sister more about my emotions more in the past few months, so this script has just been bragging about me being moral and I shouldn't boast. Have I been like, ooh, look how great I am? Or has it been way of drawing attention to moral scrupulosity in OCD? Am I doing it for both the wrong and right reasons? And has this just become a self-obsessed, narcissistic stream of consciousness? I'm still feeling a lot better than earlier. And so these are my normal thoughts that I would just have regularly. I think I did feel a bit anxious after that. But it's the day after that today, and haven't felt too bad today. Thanks.
When I die, the carbon cycle will convert my body into another animal's poo. I drew the poo with my fringe and glasses. I feel embarrassed, shameful, guilty, anxious, worried, overwhelmed. worthless, which I guess is like disgust at yourself, submissive, insignificant, confused, insecure, and hate myself, constantly curled up thinking, I hate myself, worthless piece of shit, over and over again, like that episode of BoJack Horseman. Although I feel completely paralyzed by it, it feels really difficult to move. I don't deserve anything or any help. I just want to die. Please kill me. Keep thinking I'm sorry, feel like apologizing to therapist about telling them about the OCD. I don't want to do anything, I just want to die. Worrying about different people to the therapist as well now, but not worrying that I'm obsessed with other people. Heard women say male friends only talk to women because they're trying to sleep with them. No one said that to me, but questioning my own motivations. Am I just reading a woman's dissertation because I want to sleep with them? That wouldn't be very nice, but if I don't read their dissertation, that wouldn't be very nice either. What do? I am interested in the topic of the dissertation, and I've read men's university work before, but most of my friends I talk to at my art and walking group are women. I'm not consciously trying to sleep with any of them, but what if I'm only talking to them because I'm attracted to them? That would be bad. It just seems a bit suspicious that I'm only really talking to the women there. I don't really know how attracted to people I am in general. So I'm confused, anxious, worried, guilty. I don't know if the antipsychotic lowers sex drive. If I wasn't on an antipsychotic, would I not be that nice? Or has the OCD just made me really repressed? I don't mind helping her with her dissertation, but if I'm only doing that because I'm attracted to her, then that would be a bad thing and I should be nice, but not in a transactional way. I'm worrying about this, and because I'm anxious, I'm getting a groinal response. And this is making me think I'm attracted to them and just want to sleep with them. So this is like really confusing. I just feel so confused. And if this comes up in therapy and I get another groinal response, it's going to make me think I'm aroused, even if I'm not mentally aroused. And it's going to make me think I'm being really inappropriate and creepy by talking about it and making other people really uncomfortable. But I also get really uncomfortable and anxious when talking about anything sexual. Am I just projecting and transferring my own OCD and uncomfortableness onto the therapist? Is it even appropriate to talk about this topic to the therapist? If you're really nice to other people but really horrible to yourself, people really like you, but if you're really nice to yourself and really horrible to other people, people don't like you. It's weird because in both cases, you're being both nice and horrible, yet one option is deemed more moral. Your morality only seems to apply to how you treat other people, but not how you treat yourself. A bit after I had those thoughts, I had these thoughts. The groinal response was still really negatively affecting me. Still thinking I hate myself. Getting cuts makes me anxious, but I keep feeling like repeatedly punching myself instead. Fear of expressing any anger in general, though, even if it's just towards myself. Never normally feel like punching anyone. Ended up punching myself a bit when no one was there. Am I a bad or aggressive person for punching things, even if it is just myself? So crying a lot, and normally self-harm is common in autistic people who are under sensitive to pain, but I am hypersensitive to pain, and apart from suicide, I would never normally self-harm. So did try strangling self a few hours after punching self, but I'm hesitant to mention that because I don't really know how to strangle self properly. So it didn't really do much, and so probably just seems like I'm doing it for attention. Could taste a bit of blood in throat, but not much, so probably unrelated. I strangled myself again, but not that hard. I am probably physically fine, and so do not want to be manipulative by making it sound worse than it is. I have no desires or intentions of harming anyone else and have no history of that, although it is a bit worrying that I've been violent, even if it's just towards myself, like I'm a violent person. However, I know that rationally I don't pose any threat to anyone else, though. Part 2. Being attuned to others' emotions, fawning, people-pleasing, and feeling like you're not good enough, like feeling insecure or inadequate, can be a trauma response. My OCD symptoms tend to revolve around these things, and so it may be that when I get another therapist, we should treat trauma, as trauma may be impacting OCD. Am I only nice because of anxiety and I'm not necessarily good-hearted? Am I not really nice? I would still do nice things when people aren't watching, or in the past when I've been intoxicated and had no anxiety, I think I was still nice. Are these seemingly good qualities actually bad qualities because they're interfering with my life? Do I not really have good qualities? Do I have to be less nice? But maybe I would feel worse about myself if I was less nice. I want to be nice. Really liked therapist's yellow trousers, as you don't normally see yellow trousers, so really nice and unique, but not sure whether to compliment someone based on things like that in case you sound creepy. Don't want to put them off wearing yellow trousers again. This seems like a positive thought towards them, and so it's really hard to tell whether it's your OCD making you think you have positive feelings for them, or how much is OCD and how much is actual feelings. It's very confusing and very worrying, because if it was just OCD, you would know you're not actually obsessed with them, and there's nothing to worry about. But if it wasn't just OCD, it would make things weird and difficult and complicates things. Feel like I'm expressing my thoughts deliberately to seem nice and elicit sympathy, and that even though thoughts just happen to be about a therapist and not a therapist's fault, that I'm guilt-tripping therapist and manipulating them, and that this is all part of some plan to achieve an ulterior motive. Obviously, this is probably just my OCD talking.
One of the reasons why I haven't drawn any new drawings for this part of the video is because my drawings are usually related to my anxiety and depression, and so if I was just to draw the rock as various women, I would think I was crossing the line into actually being creepy, weird, or obsessive. I can't really be bothered to draw and need a break from drawing, and so a pair of yellow trousers would be very easy to draw, and so I've thought quite a bit about drawing them. But then that makes me anxious, and I seem to be getting fixated on the yellow trousers to the point where it's actually getting a bit worrying and concerning. I've been debating and ruminating a lot whether to draw them. This part of the video is still set at the end of time, so maybe the dark eternal void of nothingness goes on for so long that statistically even the least likely things to happen, like a pair of trousers spontaneously arising into existence, can happen. This would be a Boltzmann pair of trousers. I've related the yellow trousers to the story of my videos about the end of time, and so the last thing I want is this to turn into some romantic, maladaptive daydream.
The trousers are different in a good way, but because the bright yellow trousers are so different, if someone else wore them, you might make a judgment about them. However, good-looking people suit everything. So do you think the therapist suits the yellow trousers because you think they're good-looking? Basically, are you obsessed with and have feelings for the therapist? I'm not so sure how favourably I reacted when someone else wore bright green shorts 7 years ago, but when I was a child around 15 years ago, and I was choosing a smart shirt for a wedding, I would only wear a bright orange shirt. Do I just like the trousers because of my own personal taste in fashion, or is there something else going on? I feel like although I am sensitive to bright light, a lot of autistic people like myself like bright colours. The therapist is an autism specialist and probably had that in mind with their clients in general. But I hope I don't mean that in a I'm so obsessed with them that I think every small action they do has me in mind. I think I meant the other clients in general. So basically, after all this rumination, I am no closer to figuring myself out, and I am just more worried and confused to the point where I don't know what's real, and I feel I've lost touch with reality, even though I'm not psychotic. Anyway, here's an orange shirt that has spontaneously appeared at the end of the universe.
Watched Family Guy and Herbert the pervert liked Chris's hat and sniffed it. Obviously, I have no desire to smell therapist's yellow trousers, but I liked the yellow trousers, so is that in some way comparable to what happened on Family Guy?
It may be inappropriate to mention that part to therapist, and this video keeps getting weirder and weirder, and so I am still anxious about showing therapists, as even if I'm obsessively worried that I'm obsessed with them, rather than actually being obsessed with them, the video will probably still make them feel a bit weirded out, which is bad. They're trained in things like OCD, but it would still be weirder for them if the OCD is actually about them. If I put the image of the trousers horizontal in the video, the drawing takes up more of the screen and you can see the drawing's details clearer. But if I make the drawing horizontal, I worry it looks suggestive, as if the person wearing them is lying down horizontally. I care about morality, but I also care about what people think about me and how my videos are received. I'm ruminating about a lot more than just the trousers, but it just shows that OCD can make you overthink and overanalyze and blow out of proportion even the smallest of things. Constant rumination has felt too much, and now I feel overwhelmed, a bit withdrawn or irritated. However, thoughts are so ridiculous they're funny, and so maybe that means you were feeling daft or playful thinking about the video earlier. Have I reduced a therapist to an object, like a yellow pair of trousers? Am I objectifying them? Plot twist, what if they never even had yellow trousers and I've just remembered it wrong? That had crossed my mind, but I'm sure they were wearing yellow trousers. At least I think I'm sure. I don't want to miseducate my viewers. My videos have to be perfect. Feeling insecure, fear of inadequacy. I know you might say it's just OCD, so separate yourself from your condition, but would you tell a psychopath who's just killed someone that it's just psychopathy and to separate themselves from their condition? Maybe I'm feeling guilt or shame. If I was talking to someone else with OCD, I would say their thoughts go against their values and are actually the opposite of who they are as a person. But I hold myself to much higher standards than I hold other people to. There's quite an extreme difference in how I view myself versus how I view other people. I understand that if I was to impose very high standards on other people and control them, it wouldn't be very nice for them. But am I changing my video to control other people's reactions to it? And does that mean I'm by extension controlling other people? I don't want to be really controlling like a certain emotionally abusive person in my life who controls other people and who might have obsessive compulsive personality disorder rather than OCD. Will I repeat the cycle of abuse? I don't want to become abusive. One past therapist I had took aspects from different therapies, but I've never really had a psychodynamic therapist where you talk about yourself and they analyze you. A narcissist may go to psychodynamic therapy because they love talking about themselves. I have talked about just this type of OCD for over half an hour in this video. Even if I don't have narcissistic personality disorder, I've talked about myself so much that at the very least, is that not self-absorbed or self-indulgent, which would be bad. Maybe it's just because at the minute all my thoughts revolve around the OCD. Cognitive behavioral therapy may only treat surface level problems, and maybe I need other therapies to get to the root of my problems. If I already overanalyze and overthink my own psychology due to OCD, I feel like being analyzed even more in psychodynamic therapy would just feed the OCD and make it worse. I am very aware that I disagree with people about colours. I might say a turquoise object is green and someone may say it is blue. The trousers are an orangey yellow. Am I referring to them as the correct colour? Do I refer to them as golden? That sounds creepy, obsessive, or overly romanticised, like how someone might refer to someone as having luscious golden locks of hair. Their hair is not blonde though. I hope I don't say, I like your golden trousers. Has this video gotten so mental that it's no longer sensitive to the therapist's feelings? The therapist is giving me occupational therapy, not ERP therapy. You don't need to go on and show them the whole video. Their job is probably emotionally draining enough. Them watching the whole video wouldn't be necessary and wouldn't achieve anything, and seeking reassurance and validation from them would only feed your OCD and make it worse. So I'll probably not show the therapist the full video, but at the same time this video is probably funny and people are more interested in things that directly affect them,
So maybe I should show them some of the part about the trousers. Maybe I'm just projecting my own self-centeredness when I say people are more interested in things that directly affect them. If I'm now just thinking about the yellow trousers in isolation, is that to distract myself from thinking about the therapist wearing them? With OCD, groinal responses are caused by anxiety, not arousal. I've still been very anxious, but I haven't really had any groinal responses the past day and a half. Have I managed to shift my attention off the therapist onto harmless thoughts about their yellow trousers? Are the yellow trousers now part of some innocent maladaptive daydream to distract and distance myself from thinking about the therapist as a person, but therefore further objectifying them? Has anxiety about the therapist turned into anxiety about YouTube videos? Maybe my videos are just obsessive, or maybe I feel some level of joy, excitement, or amazement to do them, as well as being obsessed with the videos. People with autism pay attention to small details. Is me fixating on a small detail like the therapist's trousers being yellow part of both autism and OCD, and how the two interconnect? Autistic people can personify inanimate objects. All the inanimate objects in my video are conscious. Does that mean the trousers are conscious? I don't know. The trousers are brightly coloured and so probably have a happy temperament. They spontaneously reappeared into the universe at the end of time. Maybe they want to remain positive, but being amidst the dark, all-consuming, all-encapsulating, eternal void of nothingness probably challenges this happy outlook. I worry this is maybe taking things too far, but in most of my videos, objects like Dan the pan and Casey the staircase are all conscious, and I want to somehow relate this video to my other videos and the fictional world they are part of. Like with maladaptive daydreaming, I have to relate everything to my fictional world known as a paracosm. Maladaptive daydreaming is not currently its own diagnosable condition and may be a symptom of another condition. Psychiatrists just said my daydreaming was part of my OCD, so yeah, I can't really know whether I definitely have maladaptive daydreaming. Now I'm getting too absorbed by the video and it's making me anxious and overwhelmed, and I wish I could decide, right, I've talked enough about yellow trousers, let's take a break. But video making and constantly thinking about your videos is compulsive. Went to bed, but I'm too anxious to physically lie down flat in bed again. I'm sitting on the bed instead. If I was to ring a mental health phone line, how do I explain to them, I'm having a crisis over a pair of trousers? I feel embarrassed. What could they even suggest doing? If the smallest thing, like the colour of the therapist's trousers, makes me anxious, do they have to walk on eggshells with me? I know personally that constantly walking on eggshells around a person like a parent is not nice. Am I just like that person? It is pretty much just the trousers that are triggering me though. Am I that controlling that I'm not letting someone wear certain clothes? I mean, if anything, you shouldn't avoid your fears. I say let them wear the yellow trousers. Now, by having these thoughts, does that mean instead of thinking about them as a therapist, I'm thinking about them as some sort of partner who you'd control what they're wearing? That would be really obsessive and creepy, but I have to remember that OCD thoughts are the opposite of who I actually am. Or is this just transference? From drawing the yellow trousers to then actually incorporating the yellow trousers into the fictional world, you're going down a slippery slope. Maybe this is the slippery slope fallacy, but the more you do bad things, the more you get overexposed to doing them, and you end up doing worse and worse things. I feel guilty or ashamed, disapproval of myself and the video, and no longer amused. My videos in general are supposed to be surreal, but maybe this video is weird in a bad way. I hate myself. I'm worthless. Now am I guilt tripping and manipulating them more? One of the reasons I was thinking about the bright orange smart shirt I wore is because in the film Dumb and Dumber, Lloyd wore a bright orange shirt. Lloyd was obsessed with someone. I'm not actually obsessed with anyone in the same way, but my daft personality is quite like Lloyd's in other ways. I pick up earthworms on the pavement and put them on the grass so they don't dry out and die. This led me to develop a special interest in worms. I relate to Lloyd, and in the film they want to open a pet shop specialising in worm farms called I Got Worms. I wasn't going to rewatch the Dumb and Dumber films in case they were triggering,
but I had nothing else to watch, and I shouldn't avoid my fears, so I rewatched and enjoyed them. Don't get me started on pink shorts. 9 years ago, my friend wore pink shorts. At the time, they were still male presenting, so there's nothing weird going on there. But with autism, your long-term memory is so weird and good that you remember really random specific things. And if you were to ever tell anyone you remember something about them from 20 years ago, from when we were 4 years old, that would look creepy. When I was wearing the orange shirt to the wedding 15 years ago, I remember my granddad saying the weather forecast is 18 degrees for the day. The pink shorts have also appeared again at the end of the universe, because the universe goes on for so unimaginably long that eventually even the least probable things will statistically happen. I'm not even interested in fashion, I just think the yellow trousers are quirky.
Part 3.
This video talks about suicidal thoughts, but please be aware that depression warps the way you think about the world, and that you should not actually kill yourself. And there's a more optimistic bit at the end. There was the second coming of Rock Jesus, then the third, eventually the 100th, then millionth, then trillionth. A Google is a number that means 10 to the power of 100. Eventually, at the end of the universe, there will be the Google coming of Rock Jesus. There's nothing left in the universe for Rock Jesus to preach to. Rock Jesus' abandonment issues have been triggered, and they feel abandoned. I'd rather believe what I think is the truth, not what feels good. And so if I had an existential therapist, I don't want them to just tell me I need Jesus. That makes it really hard, because I think life in general actually is an overall negative thing, and that's depressing. Even if I ever did get better, suffering would still be a normal part of life. Cancer affects 1 in 3 people. Everyone will go through very traumatic events in their life, and everyone's always dealing with something. Even something like tinnitus affects 1 in 7 people. Mental health affects 1 in 4 people. Everyone experiences grief and pain. At some point, everyone will probably need an operation. The thought that this is all common enough to just be considered a normal part of life is so horrible and invalidating. And as you get older, you'll just rack up more health conditions, making life even more of just pain and suffering. And as you get older, you'll be able to do less positive things to keep you occupied. Most of the time spent in someone's whole life is doing a job they don't like. Is this all there is to life? I feel suicidal. If you were playing a game you hated that just made you anxious and depressed, and you never got any enjoyment out of it, you would stop playing the game. Even happiness is fleeting and just feels hollow to me, as if I'm not really experiencing the happiness, and it never feels pleasant. Now I'm crying. Even if every emotion serves a purpose, why are most of the feelings on a feeling wheel negative? What's the point or purpose to doing something that is just negative when you'd rather be dead? When you'd rather just be dead. I'm in the bath at the minute writing just this small part, and I've probably washed my hair 3 times because I don't even know what I've washed anymore. A certain person in my life who doesn't even have depression is so critical, pessimistic, negative, hopeless, and miserable that it's so hard for them to not influence your perspective and outlook on life. Now I worry I probably sound like them in this video. Can I even tell anyone I think that about the person, or would that be too nasty? I don't want to turn anyone against them, and because that person doesn't have depression, you think, is that what life just feels like for a normal person? I've only been thinking these depressive thoughts, but should I not even mention that I was in the bath? Would that sound creepy given what the other topics of this video have been about? But I always feel at my worst in baths, because there's nothing to distract yourself from your thoughts, and you can't be motivated to get out of the bath. I want to make this video public because I have an external locus and need other people to tell me whether my videos are good. But because I've talked about people from my personal life, I'm worried whether I should. I wouldn't like people saying negative things about me publicly on YouTube. However, I also understand that I don't talk about them till an hour and a half into the video, and nobody is probably going to watch that part, or if they did, they wouldn't know the person in real life, and so couldn't be turned against them. I also worry if I make this video public, it will convince people to kill themselves, which I don't want. I'm out the bath.
A hopeful vase of spring tulips spontaneously appeared at the end of the universe. If I was to say to someone that depression warps your perspective and worldview, that life is not just suffering, and that lots of people with mental health problems find happiness in life and can manage their mental health problems, that even though it is normal for people with depression to feel hopeless, that there is hope for them and life does get better for a lot of people. Their depression is just making them think they can't get better. That if you have a family, they still really love you, even if the depression is making you think they don't. Even if you're not in contact with your family, they probably still care about you more than the depression is making you think. Even if you have no family left, people still care about you and will be upset when you're gone. That you're not really a loser or worthless. Even if you do commit suicide, there's not really any sure way to do it. You could always survive and end up in a worse condition. If I was to tell someone with depression all these positive things I've just listed, it would be hard because I'd have to admit, acknowledge, and accept my own distorted view of the world, no matter how logical my worldview seems, even if my scenario feels different to the people that get better. Even if there is no intrinsic meaning to the universe, what you do is still meaningful to yourself and the people around you. You can give life whatever meaning and purpose you want that is important to you and the people around you. The end of the universe might be a bit depressing, but scientists don't really know for sure what's going to happen to the universe, just like you don't know for sure what's going to happen to you.
The rock is a squid covered in a shell made of rock. I am a shape-shifting amoeba in disguise. At the end of the universe, in the dark, eternal void of nothingness, all that remains of the rock and me are our dark essences made of nothingness. I have difficulty relating and connecting to other people as if I'm experiencing reality fundamentally different to other people. With inanimate objects like rocks, you can choose what they're feeling and you can project your own feelings onto them. You can relate to them and feel connected, but a while ago I felt related to the rock because with autism I mask and cover up my true amoeba self, but with the rock they have dissociative identity disorder, or DID, and they cover up their true squid self as well. While there are differences between the two conditions, I felt connected to the rock, and I thought I know a person with OSDD, which is very similar to DID, and so if I can relate to the rock, I can connect to other humans who have very similar conditions to DID. I am grateful for my friends, and I hope by making this video about dissociative identity disorder, I haven't turned the condition into a spectacle. Unfortunately, I think I have a bit though. And I will say that The Rock had similar conditions to that person before I knew the person had those conditions. And in the story, I was in a relationship with The Rock before I even met that person. So basically, I'm not actually obsessed with anyone, even though I worry about things like I'm obsessed with people. Distress warning, extremely taboo, intrusive thoughts, and OCD themes. I'm really confused about how I feel about the therapist. I'll cuddle family members for half an hour and obviously there's no attraction going on there. I even find earthworms cute and would love to cuddle a giant earthworm, which actually exist. My dark, empty essence left over at the end of time cuddles an earthworm. I'm not having any sexual thoughts about the therapist, and I'm not mentally aroused at all seeing them. However, part of me has the desire to give them a hug or a cuddle. I would never actually give them a hug because it would be inappropriate. But what does wanting to give them a cuddle mean? I must have some positive feelings towards them. Am I romantically attracted to them, or do I just like them in a completely innocent way? I'm so confused and a bit anxious. I've only felt sexual attraction to a few people in the past few years, and I don't think the therapist is one of those. Maybe I feel loving, or maybe the OCD anxiety just makes you think you feel loving. Am I attracted to the therapist? I don't know if OCD antipsychotics and high prolactin levels reduce libido. If I'm not really experiencing any sexual attraction to anyone, does that mean I fill in the blanks and mistake other feelings for sexual attraction? With OCD, you can worry you're a paedophile. But despite this, I've never actually felt sexually attracted to a child, and I've never had any sort of groinal response either.
Am I mistaking finding things cute for sexual attraction? It's like if I see an adult or a child, I won't feel any sexual attraction to either. But because the child is cute in the same way a dog is cute, your OCD will make you think you're more attracted to the child than the adult, even though you're in no way actually attracted to the child, and it's just anxiety distorting your perspective and making you think you are when you're not. Obviously, these are just common symptoms of OCD and are in no way a reflection of intent, belief, or behavior. I don't think I can make this video public anymore. If nobody can see this video, nobody can like it. I feel I need other people to like my videos for the videos to be good. All three of the therapists I've talked to about this have said I'm clearly not a paedophile, and that OCD anxiety can just make you worry about things like that because you care about being a good person. One therapist actually said I'm the safest person to be around because the fact that their thoughts are so distressing means they are the opposite of my moral values. Even though I've not actually done anything wrong, maybe I still feel some shame because I'm not sure how this video will be received. I hate myself. Maybe I'm feeling maybe a bit depressed and quite suicidal. This part of the video is such a train wreck. Do I just think the therapist is cute rather than being attracted to them? I don't know, I'm just very mixed up. But what if I am sexually attracted to the therapist? The OCD makes me feel like I can't know anything for sure. With OCD, you can't tolerate any level of uncertainty. With my OCD, I worry about taboo things, or staring at people, or being obsessed with people and creeping people out or making them uncomfortable, even though none of these things are true. I worry about being angry that I'm going to shout at someone or be nasty to them, or that I'm like a certain person if I'm angry or miserable. When you hear about men committing violent or sexual crimes against women, it makes you feel bad about yourself because you're a man and men can commit more sexual and violent crimes. Hearing other negative things about men can make you feel bad as well because I have to be the nicest, most moral, perfect person. Even if I don't do anything bad, it feels like there's still something bad about yourself that makes you predisposed to doing bad things. Went to an all-boys school and got bullied a lot by a lot of people. Certain really nice women in my life and other men that can be difficult and nasty in life can make you associate qualities like being nice, caring, and being sensitive to other people's feelings with women, and so feel bad about being a man. Worried about taking or coming off tablets because feel like they might make my personality less nice and gentle, or more irritable, angry, or lithium might make me less creative. Antipsychotic treats irritability and autism, and so if I come off antipsychotic, I may not be as nice. My personality has to be perfect, and that might change if tablets are altered. Worried about testosterone increasing if reduced risperidone as like my feminine qualities, and don't want to be more angry or sexual as people go to extreme length and will do bad things for sex. Just wanting sex all the time would be a bad thing as more meaningful things to life. Maybe I act more feminine. Because of OCD, anything to do with sex is bad. Hearing lots of criticisms about men makes me feel bad, even though you don't do the things being complained about. Makes me angry, and I might disagree with some of the things, but then worry I'm a bad person and have the wrong opinions if I don't agree with everything someone says, or if I don't side with the marginalized group. Worry I'm sexist or racist, etc. If people are arguing, like man saying men can tolerate more pain and moan less, but lots of women arguing women can tolerate more pain and moan less. I think there's probably more variation within the sexes than between them, and you can't make a sweeping statement about either group. Then you might think you're a bad person because you don't side with the marginalized group. Also worry that if I come off antipsychotic, sex drive might increase, and even if when I reduce the tablets, I don't do the terrible things I worry about, I might still have problematic behaviors, and that worries me and makes me feel really guilty.
I don't want to be angry and snap at people, and I don't want to have sexist or problematic behaviours. I don't want to be fallible. But then if you associate positive qualities with women, are you then putting them on a pedestal, which would be problematic because people want to be liked based on their individual characteristics and achievements, not some broad category that includes billions of people like their gender. I don't even know what putting someone on a pedestal actually means, and so maybe I'm confusing things here. I've just heard putting people on a pedestal is bad. Maybe I've made myself sound worse and weirder by mentioning the pedestal thing. I don't know what to think. Now am I just virtue signaling? I normally feel hesitant to virtue signal because sometimes people who virtue signal actually say the opposite of what they really think and may do it to make themselves look good rather than actual genuine care. I hope I'm not saying this for the wrong reasons. These are my thoughts though, and this is a journal, so I don't know.
Part 4.
Eventually enough time could pass that something more complex than a pair of trousers could appear at the end of the universe. Maybe a brain could appear. This next part is not based on my personality.
Hello and welcome to today's lecture. I'm Dr. Carl, and so basically the universe is going to be going on for trillions and trillions of years basically, but eventually even the black holes will die and it'll just be nothingness for eternity. Now, of course, if you've got something going on for eternity, there's lots of time for just things to happen, random things to happen. So maybe it may begin with, say, a molecule might just randomly come into existence at the end of the universe, but then even something more complicated could come into existence, like a brain, basically. So this is called a Boltzmann brain, and the Boltzmann brain could hallucinate reality. So, even you could be a Boltzmann brain. You could just be hallucinating reality, and you could really just be at the end of the universe where you've just happened to randomly come into existence through a fluctuation. Because the universe goes on for eternity, anything can happen in such a long time. But anyway, so does the brain have to be hallucinate the perspective of a human? Can the Boltzmann brain hallucinate what it's like to be, say, a rock or a pan? Or, yeah. So that's what we're going to find out. Could it hallucinate what it's like to be stairs? And so obviously I've been writing my stories for a while where there's lots of non-human characters, so we're going to explore what it could be like in the end of the universe to hallucinate from their perspectives.
Point of view, you are a hollow straw's crisp.
I'm gonna eat you. I'm gonna eat you. Oh, yes.
There is no hiding from me. I will get you. I can see you.
You think you can get away from me, don't you? You think you can escape? Well, you've got another thing coming, straw. I'll get you. I'm coming after you.
Point of view, you are a baby rock or metal being born out of a rock or metal. Alright, folks, are dilated 4 centimeters. I'm going to reach in, see if I can pull them out. Going to go in with the tweezers. Okay, their head is nearly coming out. They're just looking out at us. We need some pain relief here, people. We got a code red. This is a very delicate situation. I'm going in with my hands and my tweezers, trying to pull the baby out. We can do this, guys. Come on, I just need to concentrate. Shut up, I'm concentrating. Point of view, you are dirty clothes in the wash basket.
Look at you. You're all smelly in that wash basket. You stink. And look at you. You're all wrinkly. You need a big iron across your face. You wrinkly little things. Right. I'm going to to spin you round and round and round till you be sick in that washing machine. You're gonna be needing to be thrown out soon, you're so filthy. And there's no point even washing you little thing.
Boltzmann brains are a real concept in science, and so this story may actually be scientifically plausible. According to real science, there may be an infinite amount of Boltzmann brains, so many brains that more than one brain may hallucinate the same scenario from a different perspective.
Point of view, you're this rock in bed with their eyes shut.
Open your sandstone eyelids at once! You've lain in that bed for a whole year! You think because it's difficult for rocks to move that you get special treatment? You'll get out that bed just like everyone else. Open your eyes or you'll never amount to anything. Maybe I've been a bit too hard on you, Rock.
Point of view, you are a staircase.
How dare you challenge me, stairs? Oh, fell down the stairs. You've tripped me up. Oh, I'll get you back here. I don't know what to do.
Point of view, your clothes ready to be hung out on the washing line.
You're starting to fight back against me, aren't you? Well, you know what? I'll hang you out to dry. You'll be damp, you'll be cold, and you'll be on that line for hours, just lying there. You'll be hung up.
You're meant to be the one hanging on the washing line, not me. I can't take this. This isn't fair. I'm leaving for good.
The simpler something is, the more likely it may be to spontaneously come into existence. Most animal brains are smaller and simpler than human brains, and so there may be more Boltzmann brains that are animals, and this means that Boltzmann brains shouldn't necessarily have to be human brains hallucinating what it's like to be a human.
The sandstorm, I'm trying to dust, but the dust is not long enough. I can't reach the ceiling from the bed. Oh, I wish that angry person was back. I know they were a bully, but I need them to maintain the house.
Point of view, you're a tissue in a box of tissues. I've been gone. I just miss them so much. I need them to take me back. If they're going to take me back, I've just got to be nice. I've got to be nice to them. Point of view, you're the same rock again. I came back for you. Please, please, please take me back. Now I realise how bad I treated you. Stay in bed all you want. Now I understand how difficult it is for rocks to move. I brought you breakfast in bed. Please eat it. Please just take me back. The rock thought.
Well, I guess they were the doctor that brought me into this world. I'll take them back.
You're smiling with your eyes and eyelids. I love you so much.
At the end of the universe, amidst the void of eternal nothingness, some brains had hallucinated the experience of love.
Boltzmann brain's existence may be fleeting, but it was good while it lasted. In a world where all the stars had died out, our love was written in our minds, not in stars, and set in stone.
Again, I don't see why Boltzmann brains have to be human brains. Maybe there could be an insect brain hallucinating what it's like to be an insect. Insects have many hexagon-shaped lenses in their eyes.
So I have autism, and with autism you can personify things like animals or inanimate objects. So basically you can attribute human-like qualities or emotions to animals or inanimate objects. And so I also have OCD, and this means personifying things can actually cause me distress and emotions. So I might obsess about making sure I don't accidentally harm like an insect, and then I might have compulsions to make sure I don't accidentally harm the insect. So basically, this could be compulsions around checking lots of surfaces, so I never squish insects or like mites. So for example, if I'm putting a drink down on a coaster, I might have to check the coaster for any like mites or like insects before putting the glass down, to make sure I don't squish any tiny creatures on the coaster, because I don't want to cause them any like pain or suffering, like the insects or mites or whatever. And so I also have other compulsions to make sure I don't squish things. Like for example, when I'm walking, I have to scan the ground for any insects. I don't squish them, or maybe every twig I see I scan to make sure it's not a worm, because then if I see a worm, I have to rescue it off the sidewalk so it doesn't get stood on or like dry out or whatever. And yeah, so this can be with like lots of other surfaces I have to check. So basically, if I've got a couple of pillows, I'd have to look in lines across the pillow to make sure there's no mites or insects. Then I'd have to do both sides of each pillow before putting my head down. And another compulsion around not accidentally harming insects or mites is making sure they don't suffocate. So for example, you might check a cupboard drawer and make sure there's no like insects inside there that could suffocate if they're trapped inside. And so you'd have to check the cupboard door, and then you have to make sure all the cupboard doors or like all the wardrobe doors are fully closed, so no new insects can get trapped inside. And another compulsion would be so if you're closing a box, you have to check each like plane of the box, so each flat surface. So you'd have to scan each flap, and then each flap of the box, and like each side inside it before closing it. And then another thing is with like zips. So say a coat pocket or like a pencil case, you'd have to make sure you have to squeeze all the air out of the pocket on the pencil case before you close the zip. And this is just so, because basically if you squeeze all the air out, because if there's no air in the pocket, the insects or the tiny creatures might suffocate. But if you squeeze the air out, the insects will lose the air quicker and they'll die quicker. Whereas so this is just in general, there's not necessarily any actual insects in there. It's just a compulsion where if I was to not squeeze all the air out, the insects would slowly suffocate and would have a drawn out death. Whereas if you were to squeeze all the air out of a pencil case before closing it, the insects would suffocate quicker because there's no air. They would have a quick death and they would have less time to reproduce, so less insects would die from suffocation. But obviously I've never actually found an insect in a pencil case or a coat pocket, so I'm not like killing any insects purposely or anything like that. Yeah. And another thing, another compulsion is making sure that I don't use, like say if I used a bit of electricity, might be bad for the environment and maybe one insect might die, so you have to make sure that you don't use too much electricity, and this can be even just the slightest bit of electricity would make you worry that an insect might die because it's bad for the environment. So basically, when you have like TV volumes, it has to be on a set volume, because if it was on a higher volume, it might use more electricity, and an insect might die. Or, so say on my phone, might have compulsions where I have to check certain things, like before going to bed, if I'm listening to something, the brightness has to be turned right the way down as to not use like excess electricity. Or if you're coming out of tabs on your phone, like the apps, every time you come out of an app, you have to make sure all the apps are closed, as it might use more electricity and stuff like that. And then other compulsions can be like, say, if you're in a room in the evening, the light has to be off in a certain room, so that it's not like you can still see a bit, but it's quite dark in the room so that you don't use too much electricity. And if I'm on YouTube and I'm listening to a song, every time I click on a song, I'd have to minimize like the screen so that it doesn't use up too much electricity. And then other things that can have compulsions about rescuing worms. So I'd go quite over the top about making sure they don't dry out on the sidewalks. So if there's at least 20 worms because it's been raining, I'd have to pick all of them up and rescue them. Or if they're clearly dead, I'd still have to rescue them, just because the OCD might convince you, like, what if they're actually alive, or what if they can survive, because they're simple creatures and stuff like that. And then even stuff like grass, like I don't like, even sometimes I only walk on grass when necessary, just in case grass is conscious, just in case I don't like harm grass, just in case grass is conscious. But anyway, all these things that I've discussed, my OCD around this is a lot better now, and I don't have a lot of these compulsions anymore. And also I have like OCD themes around harm coming to people and stuff like that. So I like, even like stuff like with so it's not just limited to making sure nothing bad happens to insects. Like, even say with diseases or something like that, I might not, during the pandemic, I might not worry about COVID because it might affect me, because obviously COVID's not going to affect me very much, but I'd still worry a lot about catching COVID and be extra cautious, just because if I gave it to someone who's vulnerable, it could like harm them, or could be like quite deadly. Okay. Thanks. And also, I do personify stuff like rocks a lot in my videos. Like, I have about 6 hours worth of videos personifying rocks and going into detail about a version of neurology for them. But because I know rocks aren't actually conscious, it doesn't cause me any anxiety personifying them. Because obviously, if I was to step on a rock, I know it's not actually going to feel something, whereas with an insect, there is a possibility that it might feel pain in my mind. So, yeah, thanks.
Part 5. I feel quite bad about myself because lots of the videos on YouTube about people pleasing say that you're not really kind, you're just being nice out of anxiety or fear of conflict. I mean, I am scared of being stung by a bee or a wasp, so maybe there is some fear of conflict with bees and wasps, but the vast majority of the compulsions are about helping tiny creatures that wouldn't harm you, and I still help them when no one's looking. Therapist said I'm kind, thoughtful, and caring. I still feel like a bad person knowing that there's something wrong with me. What if I'm a people pleaser, and if the therapist knew I was a people pleaser, would they change their mind and think I'm only being nice because I care what people think about me and that I'm not genuinely kind. I don't have most of the physical compulsions anymore, but I would still be nice and put some insects outside if they were stuck in the house. I used to think tiny creatures would be happiest in their natural environment that they've presumably evolved to live in, but apparently some spiders prefer living indoors, so now I just leave giant spiders in my house without harming them or putting them outside. Now I only rescue the giant spiders if they fell in the bath and can't climb out. If OCD is pathological, is being too nice a bad quality? Am I still a bad person because being too nice to other people is harming myself? People pleasing videos say you're not kind because you're just being nice because you care what other people think of you. Even if I am genuinely kind, caring, and thoughtful, I still care a lot about what people think about me. Is caring too much about what people think another bad quality I have? I hate myself. I'm a bad person. Feeling depressed, guilty, or worthless. Don't know what feeling inferior feels like. It's next to feeling depressed on feeling wheel. Maybe I feel inferior. I'm still not sure what I feel and still have a lot of trouble identifying feelings, and usually I identify them based just on my thought patterns, as I don't usually feel any emotions in my body. Maybe I feel insecure or inadequate, but I'm only saying that based on my thoughts alone. Feeling a bit suicidal. I normally feel suicidal, and so I'm not saying anyone should have to change or take down their videos about people pleasing. Basically, I don't want anyone to feel responsible if I kill myself, but I don't have any active plans at this moment, so there's nothing to worry about in the first place.
Maybe it's not as simple as I have a low libido. Maybe even though I'm only attracted to adults, maybe OCD has made me think anything to do with sex in general is bad. Maybe I've been attracted to more than only a few people in the last few years. Maybe OCD just warps your mind to the point where you're not even consciously aware of being attracted to people. Maybe I've been repressing anger as well. Maybe my unconscious mind is full of sex, anger, and aggression. I just suppress all these feelings, confining them to my unconscious shadow self. If I'm overly concerned with being perfect and infallible, I'm going to have a huge unconscious shadow self because I'm excessively repressing everything bad about me to the unconscious. Repressing things doesn't make them go away. My dark shadow essence lingers to the end of the universe, gradually poisoning everything. It lingers even when everything else has been destroyed. Maybe it was the shadow that destroyed everything in the first place. Even when all matter has disintegrated, my empty shadow consumes and encapsulates a void billions of light years across, shrouding it in darkness as it grows bitter and full of resentment. I hope I don't become bitter and full of resentment by repressing anger. Simply existing is unbearable suffering. Even if occupational therapist gives me activities to do, everything will still seem pointless and meaningless. The activities that I already do feels like carrying out the motions. Nothing in life could ever bring me any fulfillment. I'm crying again. I'm not sure whether to try and kill myself, because I might survive the suicide attempt, but I just want to die and I'm considering going through with it. Even when I've been well, there's no job that I wouldn't hate. I've tried college courses, and if something's not very specific to what I'm interested in, I can't stand it and I'm unable to do it. There are no jobs I have any interest in. I used to care for a grandparent with Alzheimer's, 20 hours a week. That was really hard as I wasn't well at the time. It would be good to care for grandparent, but with less hours and some support. But they moved away, so I can't do that. Even when I did look after grandparent, life still felt purposeless and felt like only people liking my YouTube videos would give life purpose, because then I could do it as a career, and making YouTube videos only has a purpose if people watch them. There is no point to watching TV. Even if you get some enjoyment out of it, you don't achieve anything. It doesn't benefit anyone else, and it doesn't cause you to connect with another real person. If I just did my videos for myself, then they would be as meaningful as just watching TV.
I tried volunteering, but I get so socially anxious just making 1 cup of tea in case I'm doing it wrong that I'd find it easier caring for my grandparent with Alzheimer's for a whole day than making people who aren't my family 1 cup of tea. I love grandparent and want to visit them even though it is hard. It's really hard because it's 4 hours of driving and I'm really worried we're going to crash. I still visit them though, and I'm just a passenger in the car. In therapy, no point just focusing on OCD. If I'd still rather just be dead every day because of depression, the maladaptive daydreaming feels unbearable to live with as well, and my issues with my videos as well, and needing people to like them. I feel like I just have too many problems and that it's not going to make much a difference. Or that I might only have a handful of sessions of therapy for OCD, then wait more months for more therapy when I need long-term therapy for all my issues. I want to be careful what I say because I don't want to threaten to kill myself. I'm not trying to threaten that, but it feels so hopeless and futile waiting for ages for something that's probably not going to make much difference. I just want to die. Will I get discharged from community team after a while before I get better? The universe goes on for such an eternity that bigger things than a Boltzmann brain could fluctuate into existence. Maybe planets and galaxies could form, popping up at the end of time. Most of the things that pop up at the end of time could be complete nonsense. But in an eternity, eventually something resembling part of our current universe will form. These pop-up universes could be similar to our current reality, but have glitches. This may actually be scientifically plausible. Due to the glitches, the next part of the video may not be accurate and may be more comedic.
So as you may know, with my OCD, I worry about harming insects and like mites and stuff like that. So I worry about that I'm going to squish them by accident. So I take lots of precautions to make sure that doesn't happen. So I have like heightened sense of responsibility, and one of these is wearing high heels. So I wear a lot of high heels all the time, just because, like you can see, when you're standing, not like you have less of the shoe in contact with the ground, so you're less likely to step on insects. So I just walk around with high heels all the time. I think I look quite good in them, if I'm honest. I think I wear them better than all the people watching the video do. So I'll just I tried and put them up in the mirror, but it's proven difficult. And it's quite hard not to fall over. There we go. Right, I think that's enough for one. So I have naturally quite a bright face, like a reddish face with red spots. And basically, because like the bright colours of my face, it attracts insects. And if I then feel my face feels itchy, I'll go and scratch my face, and then oops, I've killed insects. So what I do is I put on lots of makeup to cover all the spots and make my face look less bright, so it attracts less insects. And then I end up killing less insects when I scratch my face. So that's another part of my OCD. So the problem with going to bed is when I put my head on the pillow, I could squish an insect. Now, obviously I could just check the pillow before I put my head down, which I do, but if I'm like moving around in my sleep, I might squish an insect. So what I do is I wear eyelash extensions, like really long eyelash extensions. And basically what happens is when I'm like lying on the bed, the eyelashes just brush the insects out of the way, so like it's just hairs, so it's like soft, and it doesn't harm the insects. It just like sort of gently brushes them,
to one side my long eyelash extensions. So what I do when I'm outside and I see a worm is I like to pick it up off the pavement and put it on the grass, just because it could dry out on the pavement. So what I do is I scoop it up with my nails sometimes, because it's a lot easier to scoop up when you've got your nail. But the thing is, it's because obviously I usually have my nails a lot longer than this, so I grow my nails really long, and I just like scoop it up with the little nail, and it does genuinely make it a lot easier to like pick up a worm, because obviously they're like fragile because they're just like small and stuff. So it just seems like a really good way to pick up worms. When I pick up worms, my hands can be quite oily. Just like my skin naturally gets oily, and the thing is, I think with some animals you're not meant to. Sometimes handling them, your oily skin can be like quite damaging, especially animals like amphibians when they absorb the toxins through the skin. So basically, with earthworms, I sort of worry I'm gonna damage them with my oily skin. So I always put like an exfoliator on to remove the excess oil. So I just go over all my skin with an exfoliator. So hair, like my hairy legs, there's loads of hair, so it has like a large surface area for like insects to get trapped in amongst. So basically when I'm outside, lots of insects, like tiny mites and stuff, get trapped in all my hairs on my legs because of its huge surface area of all the hairs combined. Basically what this does is when I go into the house, they then get took into the house with me, all the insects, so they get trapped there, and they're not in the natural environment anymore, and so they might be less happy and they might enjoy themselves less. And so what I do is, obviously it's like the summer now, so I'm going to be wearing shorts. So to prevent this, I'm just going to be shaving all my leg hair, and I think I'll shave my arm hair as well, and that's just so insects don't get trapped in amongst it. And you might be saying, well, it's a bit contradictory, like not shaving, but like putting eyelash extensions on. But that's different because I only wear the eyelash extensions when I'm in bed. So the insects at that point are already trapped in the house, so it's not contradictory. Yeah. I've got my high heels on. So the reason I was dancing with like the high heels is basically just because, if you're walking along and you walk slowly, the insects don't notice you're walking, so they'll just stay put and you could step on them. So basically, when you walk fast and you make lots of movements like dancing, the insects know you're coming, they like hear you or sense you, and they can move out of the way so you don't like disturb them. So I just like to dance a lot with my high heels. I don't know if you noticed, but I don't know if I'm like losing my hair or whatever, and basically I'm trying this beauty treatment called micro needles, and it's just like, it can be like a roller thing, and it just stimulates blood flow to areas, so and it just can help with stuff like acne and like hair loss and stuff. And basically why I'm doing this is because it stimulates blood flow. It means that if any mosquitoes bite me, they'll be well fed, because obviously, they have to eat. It wouldn't be very nice if they're starved to death, like is that what you expect them to do? Like obviously, you want to be nice to them, like it's not much bother to you, it's just a bit of blood, and then otherwise they'll starve, starving's worse than just losing a little bit of blood. So anyway, I just like to stimulate my blood to areas, my circulation, so just to feed the mosquitoes. So basically, I'm on antipsychotic medication, and it can raise a hormone called prolactin, which, like, even in men, it can actually lead to the development of breasts in men. And basically, if you have too high prolactin, and so basically, the problem was when I had breasts. I'll just set that down so you can see. They would like bang into each other, and the thing about that is, obviously, if you've got an insect in the middle and they're banging into each other, if that insect gets caught in the middle, they just like smash into each other and like crush the insect. So it's like, it's just not nice to the insect if it gets squished. So that's why I had a breast reduction, just to like avoid harming the insects. Hi, so I've been to therapy to try and work on my OCD, so I no longer worry about harming insects. So I've changed a lot, so this is just an update. It was obviously a long process treating the OCD, but I'll just show you what I do now when I see an insect. Oh, hang on, I think there's an insect there. I'm gonna get the fly. There's another insect flying round. Right. Oh, you were the chosen one. You were meant to bring balance to the force. Right. I've got the higher ground. So you may understand the not wanting to harm insects part, but you might think, why do I need to wear high heels or put makeup on or do like feminine things, like stereotypically feminine things? And basically what it is so say you've had bad experiences with like men in your life, so if you've been bullied or something like that, and mostly by like men, so basically you might have like a negative bias towards them, and then, because obviously when I'm worrying about like harming things with OCD, you might think, well, when you think of people who harm things, you might more likely think of men. Like if you think of violent people are like predators or whatever like that. And basically, why I wear the high heels is because obviously I don't. Maybe I feel a bit bad just for being a man. Just obviously just because you think of with me worrying about like harming things with my OCD and with like someone who harming someone being like stereotypically male or whatever, you maybe feel like anxious or guilty just for being a man, even though even though I've not like stalked anyone or like harmed anyone, but that's obviously you might feel the need to act more feminine to like counterbalance that, and that could be feed into the compulsions. So that's why you're not just like making sure you don't harm insects, but you're doing feminine stuff like wearing high heels. That video was a different version of reality that had popped up at the end of time. Although that was an old video, I wasn't going to say it was a joke because I felt playful and wanted to fool people. However, in the end I said it was a joke beforehand, as the other parts of this video are all real, even the part about the trousers. Pop-up universes that form at the end of time begin to disintegrate rapidly and only last briefly. Happiness is fleeting, but negative emotions last. That doesn't seem fair. What's the point of living if the negatives outweigh the positives? I also feel I should let you know I cut my hair because I don't want people to think I look as terrible as in that video. I felt happy and better about myself after I got my hair cut, but I also understand someone's worth shouldn't come from how they look. I'm still going to feel bad about the way I look though, even with a haircut, but other times I feel good about my new haircut. Part 6. I wish I could tell someone about my issues with OCD and gender, but it feels too shameful and embarrassing to tell anyone. I hate myself, I just want to die. Feel guilty, insecure and depressed.
I feel irritable, watched in between us because nothing else left to watch. I don't think it's aged well, and I don't want the sexism to rub off on me. Hate women are more socialized from a young age to talk about their feelings, whereas men are not. I had thought that I want to be a woman. I don't think I'm actually transgender, but I seem to have some issues with gender. Positive traits like being nice, kind, caring, and sensitive to people's feelings more associated with women. I am quite feminine, and so I don't know what's going on. Eventually told someone a bit about it. I'm crying again. There's only two people in the last 2 years that I would have wanted to go out with. These are the therapist and the other person I worried about being obsessed with 2 years ago. I don't think I'm actually obsessed with therapists, but maybe I'm in love with them. Or maybe the OCD is just making me think I'm attracted to them. I've only been seeing therapists for just over a month, but I haven't really felt attracted to anyone other than those two people in the last 2 years. And so it's hard because I can't ask therapist out because it would probably be breaking some ethical guideline. So I'm not going to try and go out with therapists because it would be crossing boundaries. The feelings are very confusing because I love earthworms, but I'm obviously not attracted to earthworms. And I love my family, but I'm obviously not attracted to them. So I'm not sure how I feel about the therapist. It's hard because I think, do I have to wait another 2 years before I might possibly feel attracted to someone else? Even in 2 years' time, it might just be the OCD making me think I'm attracted to the next person that I worry I'm obsessed with. At the end of time, a Boltzmann brain remembers how I used to feel about earthworms. I hand sew outfits for real worms to wear. How did my autism and OCD affect this? Autistic people can personify things and feel empathy for things that aren't humans, like insects or inanimate objects. When I see worms on the pavement, I pick them up and put them on the grass. This is so they don't dry out or get stepped on. My OCD causes distressing emotions and compulsions, like going a bit over the top with picking up worms. For example, if on occasions it's been raining and I see at least 20 worms, I have to pick everyone up. If I see worms that are clearly dead, the OCD would make me think maybe the worms aren't dead. I may think worms are simple animals, and simple creatures can recover and regenerate from a lot of things. Once I thought I saw a worm and didn't pick it up. After walking quite a lot further, I felt anxiety and had to walk all the way back to find the worm. While walking in general, I used to look down and scan every twig for a worm. Later on, my OCD got a lot better, and I developed a special interest in earthworms, and I made outfits for them. I still had rules though when making the outfits. For example, if I picked worms up off the grass, it may cause the worms unnecessary stress being handled. I therefore only use worms on the pavement because I have to handle them anyway to rescue them. I also would spend time researching things to an extreme degree, like is felt safe for worms. I would only use nearby worms, and then after putting them in outfits for about a minute, I would put them back outside on the grass nearby. Autistic people can also be more interested in objects than people, although with some autistic people this isn't always the case. Autistic people can also prefer anthropomorphized characters to people, and so I also have stories with the worms in outfits as characters. When I made the heart defibrillator for a worm, it was to examine how I and other people treat and value worms compared to how we treat humans and other animals. Worms can have 10 heart-like structures called aortic arches, and so there are 10 pads on the defibrillator, one for each aortic arch. My OCD to do with creatures like worms and insects is a lot better now, and now I only pick up worms that look alive. Basically, I have a deep connection to the worms. I even got the word worms tattooed across my face. That's a joke, but this video is sort of actually dedicated to all the worms and is in loving memory of all the worms that were already dead before I could save them. Just light a candle. And for all the worms out there that are pink to make the boys wink, here's a wink. That was a distant memory, which is why I added the VHS effect to the footage and an old western filter giving a greyish yellow old appearance. I've added the same effects to the next memory the Boltzmann brain is having. Here are my actual thoughts about earthworms in real life. I love earthworms. I was feeling down and depressed, so I just imagined a big earthworm I could give a hug to. And giant earthworms exist in real life. You can get this earthworm that's over 1 meter long, and it can be a really nice blue colour, like a Prussian blue. And so I'd love to just have one of these to cuddle this giant earthworm. And so I drew this giant blue earthworm. I drew it life-sized, so now I can like cuddle it. Baby worm, Wormy Jr. I love seeing cute earthworms going about their little worm business. I think this is a baby worm and I love its little pink squidgy head, assuming that's the head. Here's a baby worm all curled up like a human in the fetal position. I love that worms are all squidgy. Here's a baby worm in their cot. The worm is wearing a gender-neutral green hat because earthworms are non-binary and have both types of reproductive organs. Worms are very vulnerable. Worms are blind and deaf but can sense vibrations in the ground. The worm has sunglasses, a hearing aid, and a stick. There should be tactile bumps on the edge of pavements so that worms don't wander onto the pavements and dry out on it. I feel emotionally vulnerable, like worms. Earthworms are very loving, helping out the soil and ecosystem. Worms have no defences and are completely harmless. They're peaceful. I feel peaceful and loving towards earthworms as well. I feel connected to earthworms. Of course, go back in time to the savage Neanderthal worms, and worms were less gentle and nice. They had a protruding brow ridge, a big nose, and a protruding upper jaw like Neanderthals. They had spears and wore beef fur. I obsessively worry if I reduce my tablets, I'll revert back and become less nice and gentle. With autism, you can notice small details. I noticed this tiny earthworm when walking. With OCD, you can scan the ground looking for worms to rescue so they don't dry out. I feel small, insignificant, submissive or inferior when viewing myself, like the worms on the pavement that are dependent or helpless. I can't quite put my finger on it. I couldn't quite put my finger on the worm either, though. I tried to scoop up the worm with my long nail, but I gave up after a while, thinking if I tried too hard, I may damage the fragile worm. I feel inadequate.
I couldn't save them!
Some worms you just can't save. In real life, go back far enough, and animals like humans, insects, earthworms, and octopuses all had a common ancestor that was a worm. My ancestor was actually a worm. I'm part worm. I feel amazed, happy, and connected to worms. My great-great-great-great-great-great-great-granddad was a worm. Back then, they didn't have coloured photos, but you can see the resemblance. They lived hundreds of millions of years ago, so they're David the First, whereas I'm David the 10 millionth. So why do I feel so much like a worm? I feel like a worm because I'm part worm. It's in my genes and heritage. I drew an earthworm playing with toys like a dinosaur, an astronaut, a panda, a car, and a soldier. I look at earthworms like I would a dog, or like someone else might look at a small child. Earthworms are just cute, and I feel like I want to care for them and show them affection. I feel the same about my other interests, like round, cute, fluffy lumps of moss, or my pet rock around pebbles. I feel lovingly towards them. Like they're people. Humans find animals that look like human babies cute. Insect babies can be worm-shaped like caterpillars. If insects found their babies cute, they may also find worm-shaped things in general cute. The aliens also have babies that are worm-shaped, and so they think of parasitic worms like babies, even though their actual worm-shaped babies are not parasitic. Human babies live inside mothers like they're parasites and make them sick in the morning, like in morning sickness, influence their mood and brain like a parasite, and feel really painful during labour like a parasite that causes pain. Yet we humans think of babies very different to parasites. Because parasites invoke a cute response in the aliens with parasitic worms in their eyes think of the parasites more like a human with a cute baby growing in their belly. They feel sympathy for the parasites, like they're vulnerable and helpless without their hosts, like they're innocent and can do no wrong. Maybe that's why they allow parasites in their eyes in the first place. Maybe I, the narrator, am also one of the aliens. I feel like an alien. In real life, hundreds of millions of years ago, humans' ancestors were worms, so I'm part worm. Maybe in the past an alien interbred with one of my human ancestors, and so I'm also part alien. I feel isolated, disconnected, and alienated, like I'm an alien. I have very different interests to others, like worms and the plant moss. When I extensively research mental illness, I can't find others with similar issues or similar OCD themes. I can't find anyone who makes similar YouTube videos. I feel very weird and different even among other autistic people, and anxious and obsessive to figure myself out. And we are now back to the present at the end of time. That's how I feel about earthworms. Do I feel romantic feelings for the therapist, or do I just like them like I would an earthworm? Obviously, I understand they are a human. I just mean, do I like them in an innocent way? Maybe it's love, maybe it's just anxiety, or maybe it's a mix of both. I don't know anymore. Maybe I'm lonely, isolated, and can't connect to other people. Loneliness and inability to connect to others has been hypothesized to be the reason autistic people personify things like worms and rocks. Maybe loneliness and inability to connect to others is also driving my issues with the therapist. I feel sad and vulnerable. I don't think I have any romantic fantasies about them. I'm not planning the next 10 years of our lives or anything like that. But I still repeatedly felt like I wanted to give them a hug or a cuddle. I've always been drawn to things that are very cute, like gecko lizards. Maybe I just think the therapist is very cute. But just because I find gecko lizards cute doesn't mean I'm attracted to them. Maybe I just think the therapist is very cute. I don't want to imply they're unattractive either, because I don't think they're unattractive either, and I wouldn't want the therapist to think they're unattractive. I'm confused. Maybe I am attracted to them. I don't know. The first session I had with them, I noticed their eye colour and thought they had nice eyes. I would never normally notice someone's eye colour. What does this mean? I have not really been getting any groinal symptoms the past week and a half, so I think they were just caused by OCD. As even if I had a crush on someone, I wouldn't have been getting the same level of groinal responses, so it's quite clear they were just caused by OCD anxiety. I hope by saying I haven't been getting groinal responses for a while, that it's not going to jinx it. I really like this song, and of course autistic people commonly listen to the same songs a lot because autistic people have repetitive behaviours that relate to their sensory needs. I listen to music on YouTube, so there is a video that appears every time you listen to the music.
the person in the music video looks a bit like the therapist. This is very confusing because if I really like the song and the song causes me to feel certain emotions, I might mistake the feelings I have about the song for the feelings I have about the therapist. I wouldn't say the music video is too inappropriate, but obviously you know what music videos are like, and the song is a very vulnerable song. Of course, I always look away when the music video is playing, and I think I just genuinely really like the song, so I'm not trying to do anything inappropriate, but it's just very confusing. I think that one song has caused a lot of the recent confusion I've had, and due to my OCD, I have always paced a lot while listening to music out of anxiety. All that remains of reality at the end of time are the dark, empty essences of what once was. Part 7. My mum has the skin condition rosacea, which makes their face pink. Now, I love pink worms, and I think worms are cute, but my mum is also pink and very cute, so because I also love my mum, I refer to her as an earthworm. I mean that in the nicest possible way. Even though I am quite obviously not sexually attracted to any family members, sometimes because of OCD I worry I'm too close to my mum. Transference is when someone redirects their feelings about one person onto another. The therapist has the same hairstyle as my mum, which is quite worrying. However, because they have the same hairstyle, when I'm comparing the therapist to a worm, am I transferring my feelings about my mum being a worm onto the therapist? There are a lot of complexities to this topic and various worries around transference. Because of transference, I treat the therapist like someone I'm close to, that's going to weird out the therapist because I've only been seeing them for just over a month. Obviously, you probably have to have a high IQ and high emotional intelligence to be a therapist. But am I going to treat the therapist as if they're less intelligent because of transference? My mom probably does have a high emotional intelligence. They can just be a bit daft. I'm just saying all this because it's funny that 15 minutes of this video is me worrying and debating whether I like the therapist's trousers because of my own personal taste in fashion or whether I'm secretly obsessed with them. And another 15 minutes of the video is me comparing the therapist to earthworms, which I like, to try and figure out in which way I like the therapist. Also, you can make fun of your mom because you're close to them. However, I don't want to belittle the therapist because of transference. The person I worried about being obsessed with before the therapist had a similar hairstyle, and when I've had intrusive thoughts about children, they've had the same hairstyle. It just seems my OCD latches onto that hairstyle, and it's very distressing because if I'm attracted to the therapist, why would I compare them to my mom? That's very weird. I've been listening to a psychology audiobook though, and at the minute it's talking about Sigmund Freud, transference and object relations theory, which is where your attachment to your primary caregiver shapes your future attachments. I think maybe the book is getting me a bit mixed up. Obviously, this is just OCD distorting things, and this doesn't reflect intent, desire, or belief. Anyway, I don't know how much I can talk about my family publicly on YouTube, so now I'll be moving on to my fictional alien ancestor. The aliens colonized the moon. When people call me a lunatic, it is very offensive because my ancestor was from the moon, and luna means moon. Lunatic is a harmful slur to people living on the moon. Only I can say lunatic because I'm part moon man, and I'm reclaiming the word. I am of lunar heritage. Please don't cancel me in 10 years' time. I felt playful joking on, but afterwards I felt guilty, shameful, depressed, and really overwhelmed about the part about my mom, even though the thoughts are irrational and it's just a haircut. It doesn't mean anything. Because I've been so overwhelmed, I felt irritable, and I've ruminated a lot about the video and other overwhelming things going on in my life at the moment. At the end of time, pop-up universes may form with glitches in them like a worm wearing trousers. I've drew the therapist as an earthworm because I've been comparing the therapist to an earthworm and getting a bit mixed up. The therapist earthworm is wearing their yellow trousers,
I'm a bit worried this drawing will get misinterpreted as something inappropriate. When the course of therapy finishes, should I get them a print of the drawing as a farewell gift? What if I was just giving them the print because I'm romantically interested in the therapist? Doing lots of things like getting gifts for someone who isn't romantically interested in you back is not nice for the person who's not romantically interested in you back. I wouldn't normally give therapists drawings, so maybe I should not give the therapist a drawing. However, I did a drawing for someone who helped me with disability benefits, and I was not romantically attracted to them, so I don't know. Worst case scenario, the therapist never wears those trousers again. The therapist could also dislike being compared to a worm and take it the wrong way. A print costs like 50 pence and only takes a minute to get when I'm next in the supermarket. It's not like I'm going out of my way to buy them diamond earrings or anything like that. I've walked for an hour to get to a very high bridge and I intended on jumping off it. It's hard to communicate everything that caused it, so next I'll just talk about different issues I was worrying about after it happened. I said this to the therapist. I understand you're probably used to hearing about people's OCD thoughts. However, because they're about you, I find it more difficult talking about them as I don't want to be inappropriate or creep you out or make you uncomfortable. Because some of the thoughts are about you, they might at least weird you out. I feel like maybe it would be helpful if I did talk about them though. I'm not getting any sexual thoughts and I've not really had any groinal responses the past couple of weeks. I don't think I have any romantic fantasies. I'm not actually going to give you a hug because I understand it would be inappropriate of me. However, sometimes I feel like giving you a hug or a cuddle, and that is very confusing and makes me anxious because although I might not actually be in love with you, it might just be the OCD. If I am in love with you, I worry it would make things very difficult, awkward and uncomfortable in therapy for both people. Maybe because I'm worried about things, it's harder to talk about things in general at appointments. So maybe if I talk about it and get it out in the open, it would make talking about other stuff in general easier. That's what I said to the therapist. Anyway, so nearly all the days in the past 2 weeks, I haven't been getting any groinal responses. However, I was a bit anxious about the appointment today and yesterday, and the physical responses are caused by anxiety, not mental arousal. So yesterday and this morning, I have had some groinal responses. However, I've had crushes before and didn't get the same level of physical response, so I think it's clear that it's just anxiety causing the physical responses, but it's still very confusing. With OCD, I also worry about staring at people in general. At the appointment, I have to look at the therapist's face when I'm talking to them, but I have to look away every couple of seconds so that I'm not staring at them, and I worry I'm staring at inappropriate areas of them as well. Because I'm so anxious about where I'm looking and because I'm overcompensating for it so much, my eyes are probably darting around everywhere at the appointment and I probably look like a weird freak. My mom's face is pink like the cute baby worm's head. When my mom wears grey clothes and is curled up in the fetal position, they look like a cute baby worm. I'm always wanting to give my mom a hug or cuddle, especially because I am not well and because I have nothing else to do. My mom is often wanting to give me lots of hugs and cuddles as well. And even though there is nothing inappropriate going on, because of OCD, I still worry I am too close to my mom and sometimes think I'm not going to give my mom any more hugs because I've had so many that having more would just be weird or too much. I am confused to why I keep thinking that I just want a hug or cuddle from the therapist. I'm also keep thinking about whether I am in love with the therapist or in which way I like them. I'm getting very muddled up because the therapist has the same hairstyle as my mom. Do I like the therapist in a romantic way? And that would be really bad and weird because I've just compared them to my mom. Or do I just like the therapist in a completely innocent way? And do I keep feeling like I want to give the therapist a hug because they have the same hairstyle as my mom? And through transference, I am projecting feelings about my mom onto the therapist. I'm getting so muddled up and mixed up. I feel scared and paralyzed by fear and anxiety to the point I'm finding moving difficult.
Do I just think the therapist and my mum are cute like a baby earthworm and not cute in an attractive way? What if I find cute things attractive? I hope I'm not a paedophile. I'm muddling up and mixing up everything. I'm so confused, worried, anxious, scared, and feeling guilty. Maybe shame, embarrassment, or disgust. I don't know. All my OCD themes around morality mix into one mega theme. I drew my mom a card that says, a dog is giving you their heart because they love you. They have a parasite which dogs can get called heartworm. Comparing people to baby animals can be bad as well as it can be dehumanizing and infantilizing. I sometimes compare my mom to a dog because they are very friendly and always have a big smile on their face when they see you, like they're happy and excited to see you. Sometimes I worry it's not nice to compare my mom to a dog, but I asked my mom if it was dehumanizing and she said it was not. I hope I don't treat women like they're animals. Warning talks about growing again. The end of the universe may go on for so inconceivably long that chances are there may be an infinite number of Boltzmann brains forming. One small molecule would be much easier and more likely to form than a whole brain. At the end of time, the molecule that is an SSRI, called escitalopram, forms. This is an antidepressant. Because molecules are much more simpler than a whole brain, escitalopram may form very early at the end of time before Boltzmann brains or yellow trousers spontaneously form. I was going to message what I'm about to say to a psychiatrist. However, I couldn't get in contact with them, and so I will probably just ask my general practitioner to prescribe the medication I'm about to mention. Simply existing is constant unbearable agony. I have had 5 therapists before the community team, and even though I continue to do those 5 therapists' activities, I am no better. Everything seems hopeless, and so I am willing to give a medication a try. I would like a medication that is very effective for anxiety, depression, and OCD. SSRIs are effective for those 3 things, and if I have maladaptive daydreaming, SSRIs may be effective for that as well. I have tried sertraline and fluoxetine and had the side effect of persistent genital arousal, where I had a sensation in my genitals that felt like I was constantly about to orgasm. I have heard this side effect can become permanent after just a couple of days of taking the medication and become persistent genital arousal disorder, or PGAD. If I developed PGAD, it wouldn't be something I could just learn to live with, and I would most definitely attempt suicide, especially because I have OCD with sexual themes, which makes it more distressing. I'm aware, though, of things like nocebos, where people can develop negative symptoms, even with a placebo. I'm also aware of sensory motor OCD obsessions, where people pay so much attention to bodily responses that they start getting more physical responses. I am aware OCD can cause groinal responses, and so I would take an SSRI if my persistent genital arousal was just caused by my OCD worrying about side effects rather than an actual side effect. If I can be assured that it's just OCD and that I'm not going to develop PGAD, I am willing to try an SSRI because I got persistent genital arousal when I tried sertraline and to a lesser extent when I tried fluoxetine. I wondered if other SSRIs were just as effective as fluoxetine and sertraline for depression, anxiety, OCD, and maladaptive daydreaming. I would rather not take anything that affects histamine, like mirtazapine, or anything that affects norepinephrine, like an SNRI. I am also concerned about medication that might make me more angry or change my personality in any way. I took sertraline first and got severe persistent genital arousal. Then I took fluoxetine and got mild persistent genital arousal. When taking fluoxetine, I may have been so worried about having the same side effect as sertraline that any perceived groinal responses were caused by OCD and not fluoxetine. So far, I think I have been given information about escitalopram and vortioxetine, or someone with a similar name. I'm not sure what the name is. If escitalopram is as effective as fluoxetine for treating depression, anxiety, OCD, and maladaptive daydreaming, I will try taking it as soon as possible. Because of my OCD, I will be very worried about side effects and already feel that I'm beyond what I can cope with. I may need some support when taking the medication. Other lesser concerns are how risperidone and an SSRI may amplify each other and cause more weight gain or affect sleep and energy levels. I am willing to start taking escitalopram immediately, but may need some assurance about the sexual side effect.